the depths of lockdown in Dublin. Although for the first time in 36 or 7 days, myself and Don are together again this weekend. Hello.
Hello.
And we're celebrating the anniversary of COVID. Happy birthday, COVID.
Is it COVID?
My, how you've changed the world and grown up so quickly.
Is it COVID's anniversary?
Well, we were listening this morning. We were planning just doing a little sort of in bed, what are we going to talk about today? And we listened to our first podcast, which would be where the two of us mentioned COVID, which was exactly a year ago.
Now, don't be shy. What we're doing was, what we always do when we're in bed, is we listen back to old episodes of ourselves talking.
Yeah, getting off on them.
Yeah.
You were really good in that one. Thanks.
You're so funny.
I really thought that point you made was brilliant. Thanks.
It's really quite touching.
Anyway, COVID is a year, well, and it was interesting listening back. We got quite a few things right. The Don, it's the episode with Tony Piggott, so it's I think 140 or something, but 48. But she got a lot of things right. It was the time when Bernie was looking like he was going to be the lead candidate, and Don was saying that's not going to work. They're going to have to go for someone like Biden. And we were talking about the COVID pandemic being with us for the rest of the year, which not a lot of people thought at the time, and I was kind of pitching that.
Yeah, I mean, we were great, in fairness. No, what's funny was listening back to it, it was like, it's not even that we were naive, but there's like a fucking happiness to our voices. You know how giddy we were? You listen to it going, this isn't funny. But also, like, when you're thinking back, things were only starting to get exciting. It's like a snow day, but it's going to go on for quite a bit longer than a day. And it's not snow, it's a pandemic.
But I mean, on a more serious level, the last year has been like the decimation of news, the rise of absurd conspiracy theories, which started a lot, obviously with Donald Trump, but also with COVID and also his reaction. And we have some cuts in the show of Donald Trump just saying it's all going to go away. And all that kind of rubbish that went on, and people were saying, you do you and I do me, and don't wear masks, and you know, it was, we're just, as a species, fucking inept. I mean, we're inept. If that had been a meteor coming to hit us in 6 or 8 months, would we have got something up there? Would we have managed to shoot it out of the sky? Would we, you know?
No, but we'd have so many talk show programs about who's fucking it up.
Or that it's not really a meteor. It's a hologram coming from outer space, and it's going to pass through us and spread energy throughout the world. And we're all going to be filled with the energy of this thing, so we just let it arrive. And, you know, there'll be people sitting on top of mountains chanting at the thing as it gets bigger and bigger in the rear view mirror. As COVID did. Something so tiny, as we said, something so tiny can bring the world to its knees. There is a great theory that says, you know, this is the world saying, you know, guys, you're not doing what you should be doing to protect the planet, and the planet's going to hit back.
Yeah. A year on, some of the stuff that we would have said at the time was that, like, we're going to learn a lot about ourselves as a species. We're going to, you know, it might force people to be more socialist or just to be less selfish, because we're in the age of me, my special diet, everything me, because we didn't have crazy diseases anymore, because medicine has moved on. But now that we have one, suddenly everyone has to stop giving a shit about their private protein shake and me. And actually how we behave in the community affects everybody's health. It's a global thing. It's going to have an impact that people are going to have to be less selfish, because we're going to be more dependent, or we're going to have to really understand the interdependency in communities. But, like, realistically, more likely than that, I would say the societal impact will be that people are going to be a bit more like, fuck it, I won't. People will be more nihilist. Like, a year of kind of going... I mean, I can even see when the kids are on Zoom, and if they're on Zoom with their teacher or whatever, like, that would have been unheard of a year ago. Like, you're seeing a teacher outside of their natural habitat. Like, we all know teachers don't actually have houses. They're not humans. They live upside down, hanging from the ceiling in the classroom all night. Mm-hmm. And everything's just, no, we couldn't possibly. And now the norm is people are sitting there chatting away to their teacher in their teacher's house. Yeah. And everything's just, like, nobody's that fucking important anymore.
But I also look back and I know I'm curmudgeonly at the best of times, but, you know, I look back and I go, well, what exactly was so great? You look about before times, what did we do? We went to restaurants, we went to bars, we went to clubs, we went to plays. You know, we were able to go out, which is good. But, like, we were still vapidly spending time doing fuck all with our lives, you know? Like, working, you know, commuting to work for 2 hours a day doesn't happen anymore. But what can you do with those 2 hours? Probably the capitalist machinery would say we could spend 2 more hours working. But we have so much wrong, and it just showed it up. And there's so much drudgery and so much kind of, like mental illness has gone through. Mental illness was through the roof anyway. Yeah. People were fucking gone doolally living the life that we were living anyway. I get that it feels like a kind of a prison situation.
Yeah.
But we're also lucky, we've said this before, that we have every movie, every book, everything to entertain us, every bit of food. I'm saying this from a privileged perspective. I get that there are lots of people who don't, but in most of Ireland, most people have access to television, to books, to food. We're lucky in that way. And those that didn't, when we didn't have the thing anyway, it was a problem that needs addressing across the board. I mean, am I being mean or? Yeah,
you're being really cranky now. But it gets on my tits when they start with the mental health thing, or the mental illness thing specifically, because first of all, no one gave a shit before. Now stop fucking wheeling it out because it suits you. And second of all, I have an issue with the fact that everyone seems to decide to throw around the words mental health like confetti the past 10 years. Mental illness is a fucking thing. Mental health, different thing. Like, everybody has mental health, how you are. Everybody goes through issues. And I'm not saying that those issues aren't important. I think like a lot of people that die by suicide aren't mentally ill, but they're in a very bad space. So it's not that those things aren't as important or real, but it's a real fucking problem when we start pretending it's all the same thing. It's fucking not. The fact that half the country is on antidepressants is a problem. Not because antidepressants are a problem, but because they're not fucking clinically depressed. And when we just fuck around words like mental illness till they lose all fucking meaning, you're kind of going, literally, no, it's actually really underfunded. There are people with severe mental illnesses that need hospital beds. Like, there are people who are dying because they're not being looked after properly. That is a fucking separate issue to the fact that life's a bit shit for quite a lot of people that are not mentally ill. So it's not that, like, it's great that we all want to fucking hug and hold hands and talk about our feelings now. Grand, happy days. But I think it's actually quite dangerous. And I think it also, like, if you go to the GP and say, look, I haven't been feeling great, I'm not going out with friends as much. There's nothing wrong, but I don't feel great in myself. And, my mother said maybe I should nip down and have a chat with you. And the GP goes, well, yeah, so look, tell you what, I'm going to put you on, it's only a light one, a bit of Lexapro, put you on that, and maybe make a phone call and see you get a bit of counselling. That person has now decided that they have a mental illness, and they have now labelled themselves as somebody who's clinically depressed. And chances are you're going to wear that hat throughout your entire life, when in fact that person was going through a difficult space and may have needed medication at the time. But they were medicalising every fucking problem.
Yeah, medicalising and capitalising. I mean, there was just this meaningful Christmas things like this, and the biggest pig fucker brand in the world is Ryanair. It is a brand that nobody likes. No one who works for the company that I've ever met likes working for the company, except for maybe their boss. If you invest in it as a shareholder, it's a grubby investment. Yeah, you maybe make loads of money, but it's like investing in cigarettes or oil or something.
Yeah.
And they're coming out with their Vax and Go campaign and getting people all jazzed up for the summer, and I think, we're entitled to run our business, and it's just completely morally fucking wrong. I hope Ryanair burns. Actually, I hope it does.
However, I've a theory. We then have the separate problem of making sure people take the vaccine, and we need to have a certain amount of people taking it up. Now, I believe that people are so fucking selfish that, you're going to have the fringe elements that go, I'm not taking any vaccinations, I don't take any, all of that shite. But you also, I would say, like, 70% of the people that are saying, like, that anytime I see it on groups on Facebook, whatever, 70% of the people are going, no, I'm not getting that. I'm not putting anything natural into my body. Yeah, we all saw what you're railing. We all saw what you're railing up your nose on the back of a fucking cistern last year. But okay, the minute you tell them that there's a special deal with Ryanair, but Spain's actually not letting people in if they're not vaccinated.
Fuck Ryanair. No,
I know,
but you can't buy booze without it. Here's a booze card.
But the thing is, the minute, but you have
that'll fix Ireland.
Yeah, but you need these cunts to be advertising like this, to have like the Hunzos kind of sit there and go, "Oh, my holiday, I want to get that." I don't
agree. I think it's medically incorrect what they're saying. You can't. Once you vax, you're not immune from this thing, and you can also spread it. That they think, and also they haven't paid back a lot of the people who booked flights last summer. They did the same thing. They were bombarding my email with, but fly now, there's cheap flights available, you should buy them, you can always get them refunded. They haven't refunded them. They also are a very cash-rich company.
Oh yeah, everyone hates them. They're awful. It's just interesting to kind of watch that even shitty things like that might have an interesting effect.
Capitalism has been exposed. Big government is back, and it means business, whether you like it or not. And capitalism played a huge part in this. medical companies snapped to attention and got things done, right? And used our intellectual and technological prowess to deliver way ahead of schedule, which will be something we'll always have. But the amount of things that are just couched in the wrong language or in the bit, we talked a little bit about it on the podcast before, but we want people to get back to work, hence we want people to go back to school, and it's all based on this kind of fake concern for society, but what it really is the sort of hand of money making and greed.
Yeah. I mean, you see it with the school thing all the time. Like you watch the news and the most child catcher looking horrible politician that hates kids is getting on and going, oh, little Johnny and little Mary miss their friends, and it's so important the children are the future. And like you can nearly see them kind of going, I believe that children are the future. Let them. It's so fucking false. Like, I'm kind of mortified even watching it, and you're going, look at, that's a lot of words for we need the babysitters back.
Yeah.
Mummy and daddy have to go and work.
If anything, are the most adjustable and able to adjust to trauma and tragedy than adults are. Because,
I don't even have, I've got kids, I don't even have a particularly strong position on the school thing. Yeah, I'd like to see them back at school. I'm wary of this kind of push to get them back, because I'm going, I don't really want them going in if I'm feeling like, I don't think it's great yet. Do you know what I mean? So I don't have a strong stance. It depends on how it looks. I'm not strongly close the schools or open the schools, but it's this smell of bullshit when everyone starts on about the kiddies, the poor kiddies. Like last year on the news with the vectors, the little vectors. And now it's like, oh, the children. And everybody's on about, it's so important for the children that we open up. You just want to go to the pub, piss off.
And there's also all the times they were talking about, make sure that we give Africa and developing countries, now it's a shit for all fight for vaccines. Because if you're not going to go after get the poorest people in the world their vaccines, then there's liable to be another mutation of some sort coming from somewhere. Those people also travel and bring it with them. So in many ways, it's been a disease that has just carved open the impracticalities of where we're living today. I mean, the lessons over a year, like even things like, repeating mistakes. We still had a lot of death in Ireland in January. A lot of it was in nursing homes, which was the big ball we dropped in March last year, dropped it again. And the countries that do well, like I lived in Australia, and I am Australian. And, the Aussies get shit done. Like, they're quarantining in hotels. Yeah, there's cops outside everything. There's nurses that go in every day. They have this sort of strength and depth of a civil service that makes the country work and is designed to work primarily in times of panic and emergency.
The downside being that it's frequently accused of being a nanny state.
Sure.
So it's like
I prefer that.
Well, I'm not saying it. That's not. I'd fucking rather that they're managing. I mean, we'd complain about nanny statism sometimes. A
nanny state in Sydney is that they close the pubs at the same time as they close them in Dublin. That's the sort of nanny state stuff that you're
So what I'm saying is that, like, we have to look at certain things that piss us off because they piss us off and kind of go, well, that's the flip side of a coin that we need. Countries that have benign fascism tend to work really well, but we don't like the idea of fascism.
Yeah, well, I mean...
I'm not saying Australia is fascist. What I'm saying is...
Singapore is a good example of that. Yeah. But, I guess what I'm saying is they're demonstrating at a corporate and political level a care for the populace and a understanding that our job, if we're in the civil service or if we're in the police force or if we're in the public health or teaching, is to better. It feels much more vocational. Whereas here, and we're pretty good. I mean, we're not as good as maybe Sweden and New Zealand and Australia, but we're pretty good. There's just this kind of, there's this nefarious, nefarious, how can we get out of doing work, or how can we cut some corners here, or how can we cheat, or how can we get our hair done without anyone finding out, or going for a quick pint somewhere.
I think there's human nature with that, like how can we get out of things, right? However, specifically in Ireland, of all the countries you could live in, it's a pretty nice country. It's okay. We have a social welfare system. It's pretty okay. We've got free education. We've got all that. However, considering how well we're doing overall and that we have all those things, the civil service is a fucking disgrace. They are awful. But one of the things you'll find is that people do actually go in with kind of vocational feel. Like, I mean, I know somebody who is a librarian. really wanted to do that. I want to be in a library. I like books. I also think it's really important that, you know, a library isn't just somewhere you can go to get free books. It's one of the only places that you're allowed to exist without any expectation to spend money.
Yeah.
It's a really important community thing. So there are people who go into things like that and they go, I want to do that kind of work. I want to work on making sure the country runs well. We have a nice society where people are looked after. Those people are fucking crushed because you come in with ideas. No, we don't do that. Shut the fuck up. No, we don't do that. You're not allowed to hand out any free leaflets to someone who looks like they might. No, we're not doing that. I tell you why. Because we have an agreement with our union from last year and we don't do that and we're not going to do that. And so anytime somebody wants to think outside the box or do anything helpful, aside from just, we might get sued, there's also like a real crackdown of shut the fuck up. Because traditionally, civil service is a fucking handy number. It's a handy dandy number. You'll be permanent pensionable. You won't be minted, but you'll climb up. You'll make a comfortable living. You won't have to work your arse off. You'll have a family life. So that's what it's about, and nobody fuck it up. And anybody that comes in and tries to fuck it up gets a very hard time.
And if someone does want to change something, it takes years for change to happen, and they kick the can down the road and nothing happens.
But they're punished for it.
Worse, yeah. So I think, you know, a year into the coronavirus, a lot of that hope has kind of disappeared from me anyway, that we will get our skates together and, for example, use this as a warning to fix climate change. Although Joe Biden has been a beacon in that, and the fact that Donald Trump, the fact that Donald Trump hasn't been around since we last spoke is just, you can feel the exhalation of air globally. Yeah,
globally things aren't great. But we were watching the town hall with Anderson Cooper that Biden was on last night, and I just he's behaving like an adult, talking about things like decency and making sure everybody's okay, and you're kind of going, imagine Trump doing this. So there's a sense of, okay, grown-ups are in charge again. Look, we might disagree on some things, but could we just try and clean up the situation as best we can and, you know, look after everybody in this? Is that a bizarre suggestion? And everyone's just a little bit tired of all the shit and kind of going, okay. So there's like a hopeful feeling, even though really things haven't been this bad in quite some time. There's also the exhaustion thing. Everybody's that little bit less bacon, banana, bread and vegetable plots shit, and everyone's a bit more like, for fuck's sake, couldn't be arsed. So that's there as well. But I do think we have things like, the perfect example being when we made reference last year saying, look, with something like a virus in a community, it doesn't matter how rich you are or how nice your house is, you have to give a shit about the poor people 2 miles up the road because you're fucked if we get a virus like this. So we have to, for our own selfish interest, we have to look after other people. And yet, we're looking now at the vaccine rollout, and you can just see everybody's going back into the me first, killing each other in the line. We've seen it with how people behave in shopping centres and supermarkets. We're seeing it with how governments are behaving. And so we keep getting the lesson that, no, literally, if we don't look after everybody, we're all fucked. But we're still falling into the thing of, you know, me first, and kind of running over your granny to get yourself sorted. And so it's like that lesson's going to have to keep being learned.
One thing that has come back is white dog poo, and we were noticing that on our walk today. I live in a place called Ringsend, or on the outskirts of Ringsend in Dublin, which is, it's Ringsend Post Office, is there?
No, I'm just laughing at Ringsend.
Ringsend is very well named because it's the smelliest neighbourhood in Dublin. It's not only the home of the probably 20 years ago needed replacing primary sewerage plant of Dublin. Whenever it rains extensively, that tends to overflow and just leak shite into the fucking Liffey and stink up the place, especially great on a summer's day. But also, the place is covered in dog shit. But the dog shit now is starting to appear everywhere. And we were on our walk today, and just, man, you have to walk with your eyes peeled to the ground. And I think it's because a lot of people have bought dogs during the lockdown. So there's a lot of people with, look at my new puppy, and, you know, and my baby and my puppy, and I go out with my baby and puppy. I don't, but will I clean up the dog shit now? Fuck it.
Pandemic Instagram pups.
Yeah, and everywhere you look now, there's just shite everywhere, which is another nice addition to the
and it was really bad.
Streetscape. Yeah.
Like I've noticed the past kind of couple of times I've been out and about, which is not that much, but it's worse than usual. Like there was a space where I used to always fucking get caught there. It was near where one of the kids' schools was, and some dickhead obviously let their dog out at night and went to take a shite. So there's no fucking, you'd always end up stepping in it. But it was just one specific fucking place. So it was like one asshole. There's only one dog.
Yeah, there could be
But now it's like everywhere.
Dogs.
No, because the consistency, we went on a very long walk today, and it's just fucking everywhere. And it's all of these people who are not dog owners who decided to get a dog over lockdown. And what you don't actually tend to see so much on Instagram is that the dog shits and you have to pick it up and it's warm and steaming and you don't want to do it and you have to put it in a bag.
Exactly. That's the sort of cute puppy analogy with kids. Yeah, you have to change nappies every day and their poo's sometimes green, for fuck's sake. So, yeah, you have to pick up after your dog. I mean, I had a friend whose dog I used to go and mind every now and then, and you'd have to walk around after a pick. And it was an old dog as well, so it wasn't only white dog poo, it was brown dog poo, black poo, with scuttery. Scuttery, it's an Irish term. Scuttery, that'd be sort of unpickable, uppable dog poo. You'd have to probably pour some of your water bottle on top of it to try and make it a little bit less palatable or unpalatable. Anyway, those of you from overseas, if you're having dog poo issues, do let us know by Twitter, and we will see if it is actually a thing or maybe just something that's happening in dirty old Dublin. Biden, I think, good thing. He seems to be changing things. Let's hope that America becomes a leader again. Let's hope Donald Trump. I suspect Trump is going to get hammered legally over the next 8-10 months. I hope so. And I think he's a crook who's committed so many crimes and he needs to go down for it. We're recording this podcast on Ash Wednesday.
Ash Wednesday, as I like to call it.
Ash Wednesday, as it's known in Jamaica. But we have... Do you want to explain what Ash Wednesday is? Or Ash Wednesday?
Ash Wednesday is the beginning of Lent. As we all know, Ireland is a Catholic country and Sean and I are particularly religious. Mm-hmm. So Ash Wednesday is the day where we all wear ashes on our forehead to mark how sad we are that Pancake Tuesday is over. Yeah,
well, you go into the church and a priest, you line up, those of you who aren't Catholics know that the Catholics love an old party, so they go in every mass and they get a host, a little cracker, which apparently is God as appearing as cracker. And you get a slurp of wine.
That's the difference between the prods and the Catholics, basically.
Yeah, sometimes you get a slurp of wine if the priest hasn't drunk it all beforehand. But now you get the priest who dips his thumb in a bowl of fucking cigarette butts, as far as you know, and puts a little cross on top of you. Blessed cigarette butts.
So it's like I start a Lent every year. I mean, the priests would go into schools and all the kids would get that done. Or you'd have to nip by the church on the way to work or on the way home from work. And most people did. Like if you went to the local shop at 6 p.m. on Ash Wednesday, certainly up until 10 years ago, most people will have the sign of the cross on their head.
Yeah.
So it's just a fucking
big black dog.
And you'd always there'd always be the one that would get a wonky one, and you'd be going, oh, he had the parish priest, because we had the curate and he does nice ones, but the parish priest, there's always one class of kids that had just, what the fuck is that on their head?
There was the parish priest who drew cock and balls. And no, they didn't have
what it's actually made of is
that we know of.
It's actually made of the leaves from Palm Sunday the previous year.
Pam and her 5 sisters Sunday, as it's known in Ireland. So Palm Sunday was Jesus arriving into Jerusalem on a donkey, basically as a sort of an avenging, peaceful angel or something, which the Romans got wind of and said, oi, oi, oi. But, he was...
Are you mixing this up with Star Wars?
No, isn't that Palm Sunday? They welcomed him in by waving palms. I mean, it must have been a hot day.
Do you remember that go? Like, you had to go to Mass as a kid. Mm. Yeah, so do you remember Palm Sunday? And, oh, for fuck's sake, you feel like it's such a knob. But because we had to be out in the courtyard outside, waving the fucking palm leaves around, Jesus Christ. And then anybody who didn't grow up religious, they know it's weird, but you forget all these extra little bits, like the Stations of the Cross, all that shit.
Anyway, they waved palms at Jesus as he arrived in a donkey. A tank might have been better, hardly a donkey if you meant business, or even a horse. But a mule. He came in a mule.
A mule.
And they waved palms at him, and so that's become a thing, because we all know the good book is the truth. So yeah, we have Palm Sunday, and then they burn the palms, and then the ashes from the palms are then daubed on the faces of Catholics.
Yeah. But look
what happened today?
Right, now the churches are closed, but there's no mass happening. There's no mass happening because we're in level 5, so we don't have a meaningful Ash Wednesday now. So what they've done is that some churches have arranged takeaway ashes. They're giving them out.
You've heard it all now.
They're giving them out in little baggies. So it's probably about 2 grams worth.
The drug industry and the Catholic Church have finally merged in Ireland. where you can get little baggies of ashes and you can snort them up your fucking
what they've
nose
said
as far as God's concerned. But you're meant to take the little baggie out and pop your finger in and do your own fucking daubing of a cock and balls on your...
And they say it's really important that you shouldn't be sharing baggies with anybody outside your bubble. Yeah. That's really important too. So we were watching, we knew this and we were like, oh my God. We were watching it on the news there. So you've got all of these coffin dodgers on their way in to collect their little baggie from like a bishop.
Yeah.
In his flowing gowns and his mask over. And then they were showing people dipping their hand into the little baggies. And this particular church, they had perfect baggies. So obviously someone's grandson orders them off Wish on bulk because, you know, it's more professional than handing out weed in tinfoil. So somebody's grandson fucking stepped up because you know they didn't have this planned in advance. They stepped up, and fair play to them because that is community spirit. But so you see these people dipping their fingers in, and whatever way the camera was, you couldn't see the top of their faces yet. And I swear to God, it looked like they were sticking it under their gums. But the other thing they said was...
You would wet your finger, wouldn't you, dip it in?
Yeah.
You don't want to get that nice...
Yeah, that's what they do. That's what they're doing. They're like wetting their fingers and dipping it in. They looked at the option of drive-through ashes, and that wasn't going to be a runner. But not everybody has access to get to collect their takeaway ashes. So they have suggested that you could use... this was on the news. You could use cold ashes from your fireplace, or indeed earth from your garden. Muck from your garden. For fuck's sake.
Now, I get a lot of my friends around the world are quite religious, and they go, you know, it's very, what is the word? Insulting. We're very insulting to religions.
Oh well.
You know, and I kind of go, just look at yourselves. Just literally look at yourselves, and don't you know. And by the way, any religion, look at yourself. It's 2021.
Yeah, but I mean, also, like, I find it really, like, I'm trying not to be an asshole, but you know, when somebody who's not Irish mentions how disrespectful we are about other people's faith, I kind of go, oh, fuck off. Fuck off, Karen. You're not Irish. We're Irish. You don't get to say that to us.
Ahmed.
That's like white Karen coming and lecturing a black person about oppression. You go, sorry, you don't get to talk to us about having to respect religion. We're Irish. Fuck off.
I mean, one of my friends said to me, you know, I was joking about, you know, if God came down and simultaneously, because I'm sure he can do this if he's that good, you know, appeared in the sky all over the world exactly the same time.
But he's omnipresent, isn't he?
Yeah. And said, boom, this is me. I do exist. I mean, I'd love if that happened. It'd be imagine being alive when God finally revealed. It'd be such a privileged position. And then my friend, the Catholic, went, yeah, but, you know, if he did that, would you change your ways? And I go,
no, because he's a dick.
No, I would change my ways.
No, but the immediate thing is going to be like, oh, wow, Jesus, I was wrong. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
God. Oh, my, you.
Yeah.
But then after, like, an hour, you sit down, like, let's have a drink. Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I just didn't believe in you. Like, I feel like a dick now. Sorry about that. No, it's fine, my child. Listen, wanted to ask you, leukemia. What the fuck is that about? Like,
yeah.
all the children dying of famine.
Because they also assume God is going to come down and reaffirm their dildo-headed interpretation of something that happened 2,000 years ago, that they're still daubing on themselves. The likelihood is that God, if he does exist, or she, hopefully it's a she, is a kinder, nicer person than all the crap and guilt and horribleness, you know, and fear. And I mean, God is a dictator at the moment, as far as most religions are concerned. If you don't obey him,
God-fearing,
eternal damnation. If you question his everlasting love. So I said that with my arms outspread, a bit like
I know,
as weren't looking. And just have a look at yourselves. I mean, really, seriously, have a look at yourselves and
grow up.
Grow. Smearing ashes on yourselves in 2021.
What are you giving up for fucking Lent, Sean? Going to mass.
There's probably the odd mother.
Going anywhere.
The mother who goes, what have you got in your face? And takes out her hanky and cleans it off. You're all dirty. Go and have a bath. Other great news breaking just as we press play on this was that sadly Rush Limbaugh has died. One of the biggest cunts in radio and television in America. A man who is makes Sean Hannity look like a jovial Irish punter you might meet down some pub in Kerry. Yeah, he's finally gone. Complications of lung cancer. May he rest in flames of hell, the little prick. And maybe he'll bring a few of those Fox News people with him. And then, the other sad news is, something that I missed, because I'm kind of proud that I missed it, is the whole Britney Spears situation. So what the fuck's going on with old Britney? Old Britney now. What age is she? About 40?
She's like 40, yeah.
Jesus, Britney
Maybe
Spears
she's
40.
38
Britney
or 39.
Spears
She's
40.
touching 40, like. Yeah, so the Free Britney thing has been going on for quite some time, but loads of people who weren't interested in it are now, because there's a massive documentary that dropped in the US last week. The world and his wife was watching it. It's kind of Tiger King big. But it's basically the story of, you know, she was really famous. She was this manufactured pop princess, yada, yada, yada. Had a breakdown in 2007. So she lost custody of her kids. You know, there was a public meltdown where she shaved her head. She beat paparazzi car with an umbrella, all that kind of shit. In and out of rehab, hanging around with Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan, all of those people. So it was that kind of a thing. But anyway, her father got a conservatorship of her in, I think, 2008. So around this time, got a conservatorship of her person and of her finances. Now, to be fair, she was in and out of...
What's that? Explain what that is.
Well, like, she was in and out of rehab, and she was on psychiatric holds and going in against her will and all that kind of jazz. So the conservatorship meant that she can't make any decisions for herself. So over her person, like, he'd have access to all of her medical files. She'd make medical decisions for her, that kind of thing. But financially, like, she can't buy property. She can't make any big financial decisions. She can't sign any legal stuff herself. He has to decide on everything. Which, at the time, you know, you kind of go, right, clearly wasn't well. Okay, and she's an awful lot of money. Huge superstar. So you kind of go, okay, well, you know, you could understand why something like that might be granted at that time. Even though it's very unusual for it to be somebody who's not very elderly with Alzheimer's. Yeah. But you could see why that would happen. But it's been like 12, 13 years now. And since then, anyone who's not familiar... Anyone who's not familiar with Britney Spears, since then, I mean, like, yeah, she was fucking mega famous at the time. Since then, she's done The X Factor. I think one of the voice ones was, no, that's Christina Aguilera. Super Bowl. She had residency in Vegas. She's had endless fucking perfumes and this and that. And she's had shitloads of albums that were huge world tours. Like, she couldn't possibly be working anymore. Like, she couldn't have been more front and centre. Like, her career couldn't have been bigger over those years. But yet, she's still not allowed to make certain decisions for herself. So it affects the custody of her kids, who are now teenagers, because I think she can only see them when the dad is around. But there was a problem with the dad. I think he put hands on the child. And so her baby daddy wouldn't allow his kids be around the grandfather. That leaves her, because she is in a conservatorship, that leaves her very dubious in terms of seeing her kids. So she's working away, making a mint for all of the people involved, all the lawyers, but she's not able to make any decisions for herself. And that's fucking bizarre.
That seems to have been what made all the difference. One of the things in the documentary was, I didn't realise she was banging cutting fat.
Yeah, but I think that was a brief thing.
Those of you who don't know who cutting fat is...
Phone Box. He was in Phone Box.
He's an Irish actor called Cotton Fad. We all love him over here, Cotton Fad. So Cotton Fad and
He's from Castle Knock. Please stop.
Cotton Fad and Britney were a thing. What?
Yeah, they bumped uglies.
Oh.
I think it was a brief thing. I don't know. I was never really into the pop shit, although I have been quite interested in the, not so much the Free Britney stuff. Like, I was never a fan, nothing personal, it's just not my bag. And like, I was like 8 or 9 when she kind of came out, so I was exactly the age group that was all my peers that would be massively into Britney Spears, except I kind of felt that I couldn't really relate to her, so I was probably better off listening to Janice Ian at 17. Yeah. So it's nothing against the girl herself. I was kind of more that
Janice
kid.
Ian at 17.
So I had no great interest in Top of the Pops shit, but not because I was too fucking good for it, do you know what I mean? I just knew my place. But when all this shit happened, it's really interesting to watch how the media and how the world treats women, and particularly young girls. And so the basic thing is that she came known to us as a teenager, and like, you can see in anything over the past 20 years or more, any child star, like, we're all kind of sitting there waiting until, you know, you get all the Disney stars that are like Hannah Montanas and all that kind of shit. And they're like 13, 14, and you go, grand. At some stage, though, there's going to have to be I'm not a girl, not yet a woman moment, which is a Britney Spears song. And like, usually they have their thing. Girl, I'm not yet a woman. It doesn't actually go like that, but I'll play a few.
Everything that she sings goes like that.
I know, yeah. But like, at some stage, they're going to have to like strip off, put on a leather bikini, scream to the world that they hate everything. Then they're going to do a difficult acoustic album after that, if they make it. Or they're going to end up in the nut house, like, off to the funny farm. Exactly. So like, nobody ever thinks it's going to be a smooth transition, where it is for boys and men. We have this horrible disdain of teenage girls. We as a society do. Like, there's been a long-standing thing where the way that teenage girls specifically speak tends to be mocked. So you've got the vocal fry, this like the Kardashian vocal fry. You've got that. You've got the upended questions. You know, when questions or when every statement seems like a question.
Really?
Yeah, no, like, you know, like, so basically when every statement like sounds like a question.
I never knew that.
Yeah. But that all of those things they tend to be vocal tendencies of the moment. And there was the Valley Girl thing years ago. Vocal tendencies of teenage girls. And studies have shown that language has evolved mainly due to girls between, I can't remember now what it was, something around the age 14 up until the age of 24, something like that. But they're the cohort over centuries who've evolved the English language more than any other people. But yet we have this disdain for them. We take the piss out of them. So anything like Elvis Presley, the Beatles, all of that shit was really embarrassing until middle-aged men liked it. But when it was screaming 14 and 15-year-old girls, it was pathetic. It's more than
music also improved though.
Yeah, but again, you notice the point. You notice the point that there's anything that's seen as something that young girls like is immediately stupid and vilified, and it's petty, and we don't do that in the same way about like boys like soccer. And
well, I got my first Barbie doll when I was 20, and I did. Yeah, I understood.
Did you feel people judged you though?
I understood the whole thing there, and the sort of depth behind herself and Ken's relationship, and how I was able to play that. But I didn't understand that when I was 12, when all the girls were really all over it.
Yeah.
One who hasn't cry-jagged her way through her career is my countrywoman, Kylie Minogue. She's kind of got off pretty.
Yeah, she had a weird.
Did she have a few wilderness years on drugs and drinking?
Yeah, she had the Michael Hutchinson.
Michael Hutchins.
Why do I always say his name wrong? Yeah.
Was she with Cotton Fenton as well?
No, nothing I know of. Yeah, no, she has. So she is like before, obviously before Paula.
Before Paula.
She was with him for like she was Kylie and Jason and all of that shit.
Kylie and Jason.
And then she had like a 2 years. I think it was maybe 2 years, but she had a bit of a 2 year stint where she's talked about it and everything. She she's dodged a bullet, but she's fucking still like steaming it in based on. Oh yeah, she's like sticking up fucking videos of him, and she's still using him for her concerts, all that kind of shit, which is a bit fucking tasteless, Kylie, I'll be honest. But however,
but like this, it's not exactly too soon. Like he's dead.
Well, this is the thing. You know, I mean, come up with your own material, but that's never been.
Quarter of a century. Look, he's wanked himself to death. It's gone. It's done.
That is apparently not true.
I was there at the time. It was the.
So you forget. Remember, I called you about three weeks ago. Like we were apart, and it was a Saturday, and you were like, "What's up with you?" And I was like, "I've actually just fallen down a rabbit hole for the past 4 hours, which started with the Boomtown Rats, and now I know all about Paula and everything." So I thought this is why I know this shit, because I fell down a rabbit hole.
I was living in Double Bay at the time, a year after he died, and it was the 5-star hotel there. I can't remember what the name of it was. He died in flagranti in there, and it was a bit like the old Dandelion Gardens. Everyone around Sydney knew Michael Hutchins or where he was when he died, and they saw his ghost wanking through the corridors of the hotel and stuff.
Anyway, the point that was a very interesting side. Little laneway we went down.
Yeah, sorry, cry-jacking. Yeah, so, you know, your point was that most teenage girl pop sensations tend to just get scrapped.
But we're expecting it. It's not just that it happens, it's that we're expecting it. It's like it's impossible. They either have to fight back and do this.
Don't dress like a bitch. Seriously, like, I mean, you know, the boy bands come out, and a few of them come out, and they're sort of maybe slightly gay focused.
Well, no, let's be honest. How the boy band? Let's let the boy band thing. Like, for instance, like NSYNC, which I refuse to call NSYNC because I'm not American. It's NSYNC. Yeah. Tough if that doesn't work for you. So, you know, the famous one is your man with the noodle head, NSYNC, who is now Justin Trouser Snake, who got famous. I mean, yes, he was known as, you know, the curly one out of NSYNC, who's going out with your one. But the reason he really got famous and has a career of his own is because he released an album that basically said, she's a slut and she slept with me and she told everyone she's a virgin, but she slept with me and then she cheated on me and I hate her and she's a slut. And that's why he's famous now. As we all know, anybody who was listening to this kind of shit in the early 2000s, that's literally why. It's not that he's that fucking good. He literally was just a little bitch.
Yeah.
He didn't have to go through the butterfly
but
emerges from the cocoon while the whole media and the whole world.
Was on last year's Super Bowl with her snatch hanging out. It
wasn't to my taste.
And a bunch of 15, 12-year-olds dancing in the same clobber, you know. And
yeah.
like, all right, listen, your power to the you know.
No, I genuinely, I kind of got in a bit of trouble for this last year about the Super Bowl thing, because I kind of think, fucking do what you want. It saddens me to see the over-sexualization of all women. It's never men, it's always women.
Yeah.
And I kind of go, look, there's nothing wrong with that. And I hate to be the one going, oh, kids are watching you. But I'm also kind of going, I wouldn't let my kid do hip-hop dancing. Because they're doing the dancing that's
Pole
in video.
dancing?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because she needs the upper body strength. Do you know what I mean?
Those people from Poland, they're excellent at dancing.
I wouldn't be putting her into... She's no fucking interest anyway. But, I'd be like, ugh. I'm not a prude, but I don't like
even cheerleaders are still a thing.
Yeah, it's fucking weird.
Cheerleaders still a thing.
Well, the thing with the cheerleading thing is I actually got into documentaries about this last year. So cheerleading is actually a fantastic sport.
Yeah, right.
It's turned into one. But I'm like, can we just call it gymnastics? Yeah. Team gymnastics, and because it's what it is. It's much fucking more impressive than what the football team are doing. But you're still in these little fucking cutesy outfits, and you're still fucking cheerleaders.
Cheerleader for the Toronto Raptors.
Do you know what I mean?
You're one of the rich basketball
but
players.
But they're a very good sport. Make them their own fucking thing.
And make you his daddy. It's all.
Well, exactly. I mean, they're removing it a little bit from that, but at the same time, the actual cheerleading bit is fucking ridiculous. Let it be its own sport. It's pretty fucking impressive.
So where do we end up with the whole Britney? Are we on her side? Are we sad for her? It felt when I watched it with one eye that it was a bit of a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, we see a lot of it's because
slightly
fucking idiots.
I love you, Britney. And,
it doesn't help that the face of the Free Britney movement is fucking idiots. Do you know what I mean? At the same time, it is worrisome, and you kind of go, right, this woman should not be able to be working to the extent that she is and making the amount of money she is, and I think she's not necessarily allowed to have an iPhone. Her dad said no. That's fucking worrisome. She's not allowed to.
In this day and age, you can, especially if you're Britney Spears, you can get your message out there if you're in deep shit. And it was all a bit vague. It was all people. Well,
there wasn't one doctor on it.
Are reading messages from her Instagram.
Yeah. A lot of it's that. I think it raised an interesting. I don't fucking know Britney Spears. It raised an interesting point, but it is very worrisome that so many people who can benefit from it are in a position to. That's the problem.
I would say the same applies to bands back in the day when you had your A&R man and you sold your soul to the devil and you got and if you're a writer today and Amazon takes 75% of all sales. This is, we've probably weirdly, not by design, come full circle in the podcast because it is capitalism just greedily consuming, in this case, women, people, bands, musicians, writers.
Yeah, so it opens a lot of questions. Because when you start going, when people make an argument about Britney Spears, you're going to go, well, it shouldn't be your dad because who should it be then? Okay, well, it shouldn't be this person because they've got. Yeah. And then when you crack it open, you see there's actually quite a lot of exploitation there, and we have the same people making decisions are the people who can benefit, and it's not to your best interest. I mean, even the fucking lawyers in there, the amount of money they're making by the in and out, back and forth. Sure, it's not even. It's the same way divorce lawyers. It's not always in their interest to be helpful for an amicable separation. So it raises interesting questions, but I was interested in the fact that most of the world now is kind of going, Jesus, it's awful how she was treated. The way she was spoken to in different interviews with, I think, Dan Sawyer and stuff like that. Really inappropriate because she's but even before the paparazzi stuff, even when she was 17, 18, 19 and people were being nice to her, the line of questioning and the way they were speaking to her was really inappropriate. It would never have been said to a boy. And it was just really fucking shitty. And you don't think of the early 2000s as being the 1950s where all sorts get said to women. But you're looking back at it now after 20 years, everyone's kind of going, Jesus, how did they get away with saying that to her? You can't speak to people like that. So that's interesting to see how much things have moved on. But also the fact that, to be honest, everyone did fucking laugh at her. And it was a particularly nasty time in pop culture, and the paparazzi culture was huge and all that kind of thing. And that's kind of died away, probably because people have social media now. So celebrities are more in control of leading every aspect of their personal life themselves. But it was a really nasty time. It was horrible the way people spoke about her. It was horrible the way people laughed at her. We were watching clips of it. They had clips of it, of a game show where it was all things that she's lost this year. Her family, her children, her mind, her hair. Really fucking, not just the odd throwaway line, really fucking distasteful shit. And now everyone's going, oh, that's awful. And the world does owe Britney Spears an apology. It's awful the way she was treated. But I was saying to you earlier, I was interested to see how the documentary would unfold because we had an example not that dissimilar in Sinead O'Connor. In Ireland, certainly, Sinead O'Connor generally was not laughed at.
No.
There's always some dickhead who does, but no one gets offended about it. But
Bono gets more shit than Sinead.
Oh God, yeah. But like even now, and Sinead has done much more outlandish stuff,
Yeah.
and she's suffered with her mental health, and you always get some asshole laughing. But generally speaking, like if you're in a pub and people, if it comes up, one or two people might make a throwaway comment, and no one gets overly offended, but nobody really feeds them either. They just kind of go and it's always been. She's had a very hard life. No, I like Sinead. Leave her alone. Yeah. And that was from the early 90s. And I know she was treated differently elsewhere, but there was always this thing of, look, she's had a hard life. Like, it's not fucking funny. It's not funny to be laughing at her. And lots of people would say, they'd seen her in St. Pat's, or they'd seen her when they were visiting someone. And I've never heard people really sneer about her. It's always been, God love her, she's had a hard life. Very good singer. She's very talented.
I think also when you look back on the Sinead thing, she was she's self-appointed herself as a sort of one-woman wrecking ball in the church. And it was a time when the problems with the church, there was the whole women thing that we talked about in the last episode with mother and baby homes and Magdalene laundries and all that. And then at the time there was all of the paedophilia towards boys, and mainly boys from priests. And she kind of waded into that, tearing the Pope up on Saturday Night Live and nearly got excommunicated from fame for that.
Yeah, and Chris Christopherson was a gent. I always liked him.
So she was brave, and so I think that we liked the fact that she was brave.
But the thing about her actually
didn't come without cost.
Yeah, but her thing wasn't actually a specifically anti-church thing. Although I mean, she spoke what she said, and we all fucking agreed she was right. And I don't think she wasn't hated here, but she wasn't thanked enough. And that's people would often say that now. She was right, and we actually owe her a debt. But she was like that about other things, because I was watching some interviews. I think it was Arsenio Hall, and it doesn't matter. But they were talking about her boycotting the awards, and kind of saying to her, well, like, you went last year, so what's the difference now? Big awards in the US, she'd gone to some in the season, she wasn't going to others, she's boycotting now, what's the difference? And she's kind of getting a bit of a stick about it. And as you see her sitting there, and she's very young, and she's so dainty and so pretty, and she's got like the baggy t-shirt on and the shaved head, but she's like takes herself really seriously, and she's really intelligent, and she's like her thing what I came away from it watching was, she was talking about, it was just bullshit. She went last year. She wasn't impressed by what she saw. It confirmed that basically the music industry is out of shite. And she very politely was just saying on this talk show, I refuse to take part in it. I'm not taking part in it. And it was literally, her problem is that she's got integrity. She's got this massive integrity. She's just always been this little girl that stands in front of everybody, and people will fawn over her. Men will fawn over her in the Gay Byrne sort of way, which is always icky, which is I'm going to disempower you by telling you how cute you are. And I'm going to pretend I'm being a gent when I'm doing it, but actually what I'm saying is, isn't she a great little girl?
Gay Byrne, famous for that.
Yeah.
Did it with Annie Murphy, did it with...
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was nasty, Annie Murphy, but still. So there was this thing, she got that everywhere. So an awful lot of, because she was so pretty and she was so interesting, people would be nice to her, but they'd be nice in order to belittle her. And she was just this lone voice saying, I call bullshit. Yeah. Like the emperor's not wearing any clothes. This isn't true. This isn't true. This isn't right. This isn't fair. And she wasn't screaming about it. She was just, every time she was asked, she refused to get dressed up. She'd wear a baggy t-shirt and she'd say, well, that's because this is what I want to do. She just told the truth.
Yeah, she didn't play the game, and beware the people who, I think, have nothing to lose and don't bother playing the game anymore. And out of them comes truth. All right, I think we've covered the days of us. We're looking at new ways of bringing the podcast on. If you have any ideas, you can contact me through Twitter at Seaniebee. I mean, I was thinking about that conservatism. What's it called?
Conservatorship.
Conservatorship. Like, if we've got a fairly hefty age gap, and if I ended up wearing paisley pajamas and dribbling into my Campbell's cream of tomato soup of a
I'd be down
Sunday,
to your GP saying, look, I need to...
I had somehow made you in charge of the multi-million dollars I've made from Pint with Seaniebee, and they were all under your jurisdiction. You were, there'd be people in my family who'd be going, what the fuck is she at? But,
I know, but it'd be different if I was like wheeling you back out to keep recording with me, and you're like, what do you think, Sean? And then I'm wheeling you out onto in shopping centres, because we've got merch, and you're there in your wheelchair with your t-shirt. It'd be like
a pint with Seaniebee, and I'd be brought to an Irish pub of a lunchtime. And
it's okay, Sean, you can smoke. You can smoke in the house.
I can smoke. Welcome to a pint with Seaniebee. I had so many pints with Seaniebee, I ended up with sclerosis of the liver. Yeah, Sean Ball, sit down now. And fans and former guests would arrive over, and pat me on the head, and I'd be, there wouldn't be any Seaniebee left.
Yeah, and your nieces, like, I mean, they like me, but they'd be sitting there going, that bitch, now, like, what is she at? Should we contact
you'd be dressed
somebody?
up like Shuggy Bain's mum, wheeling me in, and as soon as we wheel out, you'd be around with the off license for a naggin of vodka, which you'd drink on the way home, and they'd all know about your alcoholism and
my little baggies of ash.
I'm consistently soiling my pajamas. So, what I meant to say there was that she would have control over the Patreon funds, obviously, that we've made so much, I've made so much during the last 5 years. Those of you who still would like to contribute to that large stash of wealth that I have accumulated, I would really appreciate it if you went on to www.patreon.com/Seaniebee, and you can, for the price of a pint or whatever you feel up to, it can be 10 cents, it can be $1, it can be $10. Some people are, and I'd like to thank those people who know who they are, who have been a Patreon of Pirate Seaniebee for many years. Anyway, we're coming to the end of the Don's Top 20 countdown, and we're looking at ways in which we're going to bring the podcast forward. I think given the fact that we're in probably 2021 is pretty rooted from a COVID point of view, we're going to keep this kind of thing going. We might, anyone has any ideas, send them through to us.
Essentially, it's shit or get off the pot time, because we've been stretching this out for some time.
If you have any questions for myself and the Don, they can be rude and horrible, and if you're one of those trolls on Twitter, feel free to come at me.
This could be really fun. This is like when I was on Tinder.
So yeah, any ideas, any questions you'd like us to ask at in future podcasts? We will be, back in a few weeks, and before we go in this podcast, as ever, the Don has reached number one. Now, number one was fully intended to be a guy called Pete Dunne. Pete Dunne died pretty much this time last year, so this is probably close to his anniversary. He has already been honoured in the Don's Top 20, which we released not long after his death, and he also, we featured him, I think, on our Hootenanny special, where his new album has been launched. It's called Whacked, Pete Dunne Whacked. The title track is a great earworm, and find that where you can. So we're down to the final... the final pint down. So the Don asks me clues as to who the person might be. What's clue number one?
All right, clue number one. We're so tuned into faces that is why we can see faces in clouds. It's called pareidolia.
Yikes. I should know that. That's very specific, isn't it? Pareidolia, faces in clouds.
It's technically not accurate. Pareidolia actually means that you'll see patterns, including such things like faces in inanimate objects.
Andy?
No.
Right.
Okay, second clue. The first casualty of war is the truth.
Giles?
No. I'm really glad you didn't get it, because this is my favourite clue.
Okay.
Number 3. And I quote, I stabbed a prince of Sierra Leone, but he did smash me over the head with a lump of wood. I was 8 years old.
Oh, that's...
Narrows it down somewhat.
It's... I remember there's somebody who was away in boarding school and they got into trouble. Okay, it's beaten me, I don't know.
Well, I didn't know I was going to pick this, but I just woke up this morning and decided to. Still not fucking getting it. It's Nick Reynolds.
Oh, Nick Reynolds, of course. Why? I would have assumed Nick Reynolds had already been picked. So, Nick Reynolds, where to start? This guy's probably the maddest life. And I won't spoil it for you. I think it's just worth listening. Pretty much as I knew a couple of things about him. He's a true Renaissance man. You talk a bit about what you got from it, because I don't think I'm going to reveal too much for anyone who may have got here without having looked at the blurb or hadn't heard before.
I'm disinclined to.
Yeah.
This would be one of these that's not that I don't like all of your interviews, but there's just a handful where you go, hold on now, turn off the kettle, I can't fucking hear this properly.
Yeah.
Hang on till I get comfortable. Now tell me the rest. It's just like I'm disinclined. Well, where do you begin? I
think I'd like to say, first of all, hi to Nick, and thank you very much for giving me your time a couple of years ago. We got on really well, and we've become kind of friends to the point of if he's ever in town, we'll probably catch up for a pint.
He has a really cool tour bus.
He's a cool tourist. He is the lead harmonica player with a band called Alabama 3, who are the band who are behind the opening track to the Sopranos. Woke up this morning, got myself a gun. And that's all I'm going to say, because that's about 10% of
That's like the least interesting thing about him.
It's possibly the most least interesting thing about this guest is that he's the lead harmonica singer of one of the greatest, most enduring counterculture type band that Britain has produced probably in the last 20 years. They're still going strong. They all kind of hate each other. They all do drugs and they all muddle along. That's possibly one of the least interesting things about this guy and the life he has lived. So without further ado, bye.
Bye.
Welcome to another Pint with Seaniebee, coming to you from London. I have a guest. Sometimes on this show I have plenty of time to research my guests, but these are the ones I prefer. I've just met this guy I'm about to talk to not 20 minutes ago. And he is a Renaissance kind of guy, a musician. He plays harmonica for a brilliant band called the Alabama 3. He's also the UK's only specialist desk mask artist. We will discuss what that is. I'm welcoming to the podcast Nick Reynolds. Hello, sir.
How you doing? All right.
Tell me a little bit about why you're a death mask specialist. Let's start there. We'll come to your music later.
Okay, well, a death mask basically is a sculpture of a dead person that's created from taking a mould directly from the subject's face. This is a tradition that's been going on for thousands of years, but I suppose the golden age of death masks was in Victorian times. Death levels were very, very, very high. The Victorians, their way of coping with this is they kind of ended up embracing death. So to them, death masks sort of represented the person in sort of like romantic, eternal sort of sleep. If you look at Victorian graveyards, you've only got to see that with all the kind of funerary sculptures and they've got weeping angels, but everyone's in a sort of like a state of foreverness. They believed that to get the essence of the person, which was very important, is that sometimes the guy would come around and do the death mask before the doctor would even come around and give the death certificate. Because within a few hours, the muscles totally relax and certain features or expressions kind of dissolve, if you like. Unfortunately, these days, by the time they get in touch with me, they would have had to gone to the morgue. They would have had an autopsy generally, or at least they would have been embalmed. By that time, obviously the bone structure and everything is still intact. Areas like the jowls and everything can kind of move down and sort of slightly distort the features on the face. So unfortunately, I don't get to them straight away. It could be a week or two. But what I do, I try to counterbalance the fact that they have been laying down for a little bit, and I cast them in wax, and then I kind of do a little bit of a nip and tuck on them, and that would be
so they're not frowning.
So they're not frowning, but they still end up with a bit of a frown. I mean, a good example, if you look at Beethoven's death mask, got a real sort of hangdog expression, and that's because of the gravity.
He was a grumpy fucker anyway. But death as a post, etc.
There you go, yeah. Well, it was, in fact, it's very interesting. There is a life cast of him taken 6-7 months before he died. And it's fascinating the difference in sort of like how he deteriorated just in 6 or 7 months. Yeah. But yeah, he looked pretty grumpy in his life mask, and he looked even grumpier in the death mask. So unfortunately, I don't get to them that quick, which means there's a certain bit of work I've got to put into them to make them look. Because basically, if someone wants a death mask, they want the person as they've died, and they look like they're sleeping more or less. You get to them a week or 2 weeks later, it's a dead person.
Like, you're the first person I've ever met who's done this. That's why I'm starting here, because it's most fascinating to me. But like, who wants a death mask now? Do you have deathmasks.com, or
Well,
my dad was a great guy. Can you do a death mask for me?
Well, that's generally it. Yeah, it's the majority of them, I would say, tend to be popular figures. And that's an old tradition. Yeah, I've done quite a few famous people. I did Ken Russell, the film director, Peter O'Toole.
So where's his death mask now, for example?
Kate, his daughter, has got it in Galway.
Okay.
Where he had a house.
People don't think of doing, like, there's so many things you have to do to bury a parent or a person that you love. What makes a person think of, oh wait, before we go, I want to call in Nick and get a death mask done?
It depends on the person. The tradition of death masks really came about in order to produce post-mortem sculptures. So someone famous would die and they'd say, oh, well, we've got to make a monument or a sculpture of them. How are we going to do this? They didn't have photography. So what they would do is they would make a death mask, and that would be the sculptor's model. Basically, they weren't really considered much value in themselves until Napoleon died and had his death mask made. And his death mask was kind of revered as an object in itself. Most death masks, if they are actually to be used as a sculpture, they'll have hair added to them and there'll be a little bit of work done on them. Sometimes the eyes will be sculpted open, but with Napoleon's, and it wasn't a particularly good cast either, the ears are missing, and they shaved his head, so it doesn't look like him. In fact, there's a lot of people that contest it is actually his mask anyway. So from that point onwards, people saw the value of a death mask of a famous person. The thing about faces, a lot of people believe the face is the seat of the soul, really, and everything, how we react with people, how we talk to people, is all based on information we're getting as we're looking at their face. I mean, faces, as you're a baby, the one thing that you learn to fixate on first of all are faces. And we're so tuned into faces. This is why we can look at clouds and see faces. It's called pareidolia. We're programmed into that kind of thing. You can look at a death mask of someone and every wrinkle is a repository for countless memories. To me, I think everyone should get a death mask done because it's their last will and testament of themselves as a human shape and form. You can have a picture of someone in a room, but it's 2D, it's flat, it's not tactile, it doesn't have any weight, it doesn't occupy any space. Death masks do, and it allows the bereaved to a certain degree to kind of get over the grieving process. I think the first
Do you
losing
paint them, by
someone.
The way?
No.
They're just white, right?
No, they're bronze. They look very classical because it used to be purely for the elite. They used to have these very lengthy funeral rites where when the king died, they would have him sort of on show for up to a month sometimes. And of course, by this time, you'd have a bit of a smelly king. As time went by and all the religious rites and all the paraphernalia and ceremony and pomp that went with the death of the sovereign got longer and longer and longer, they realised they had a real problem. So what they would do is they would take a death mask in wax and they would make it look like the real person. Use like hair from a dog, this, that for the eyebrows and stuff, soften the features, dress it up, and that would lay in state. While the king had already been buried, and people thought that this effigy was the real deal. And you can see them.
Well, my old man is a very famous Irish ventriloquist.
Oh, okay.
And he made his own dummies. So you didn't know that.
No, I didn't.
And he made his own dummies on a kind of a death mask, papier-mâché now.
Yeah.
But like ventriloquist dummies' faces get started off in a similar way, where you take a kind of his most famous dummy was an Irish storyteller, an old Seaniebee, and he got an old Irish poet and used that as O'Connor and used that face to make his own.
What, he had a life mask of the poet? Or,
no, he
just
had
based
to make
it on
one.
it.
He based it on
So he sculpted
he's making
it,
a kind of a dummy out of papier-mâché, and then he has to put in the jaw thing and all that kind of. So he's not a million miles away.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, people say to me that death masks, they think they're kind of creepy and spooky, but I think ventriloquist dummies are 100 times more spooky. I mean, you've seen that. You must have seen that movie,
there's so
Magic.
many of them. I know,
but Magic is the brilliant
one
with, what's the guy?
Hopkins.
Father Beans with County Anthony Hopkins. Yeah. That's,
no, I mean, my dad.
No, but they freak me out.
Clowns, ventriloquist dummies.
Why is that?
You have to go into so you have to go in pretty soon after a bereavement, in an ideal sense, and say, "Don't mind me, I'm just, And
they give me a call, tell me where he is, and I go down the morgue.
How much does it cost to get a death mask done now?
Generally speaking, I do them in sort of like what they call cold cast bronze, and I charge sort of anywhere between $2,000 and $2,500.
And how many would you do a year?
It varies.
Roughly,
I think, well, it's sometimes I've done 10, sometimes I've only done 3.
And is it a dying business? Excuse me.
Well, it's been a dying art for a long time.
But you're the only guy, right? You're the main specialist in the UK who does this.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that have done it because they've been asked to, but they don't have a business based around it. And I lecture on the subject as well, so it's kind of something that I'm sort of like quite deeply into.
Do you get many people going, "Hi, I'm about to die. Will you do a face mask for me?" Do you get people like
I've had one person who was an Alabama 3 fan who came to a gig, and he couldn't get backstage because he was in a wheelchair, I think. But his girlfriend got backstage, and said to me, "Oh, my husband's out in the front, he's dying of cancer and he wants a death mask done." And I said, "Well, to be honest, if he's still alive, it'd be better that I do him alive. Because then when you're looking at him, he's alive. There's an inherent sadness, no matter how beautiful they might be. The mask, you're looking at it and it's still a constant reminder that they're not with you. I would much rather do people alive before they die, to be quite honest.
I'd be up for one.
But well, there you go. We're
not famous enough.
We'll do a deal. So,
but before we finish on the death mask, you also did Malcolm McLaren.
Yep, I did Malcolm McLaren. His head's in bronze on his gravestone at Highgate Cemetery. Every time I go down there, because my dad's head is there as well, and I did my dad, and he's on the same main stretch as Malcolm, so, I'll go and see my dad, and then I'll walk down the road and go and check Malcolm out, and people leave safety pins and razors and little things like that. Someone sprayed across it in bright pink one day, "No future." The people that run Highgate Trust rang up Joe Corrie, Malcolm's his dad, said, "I'm really sorry, but someone sprayed graffiti, and he went, "Cool, it's great, it's in the spirit of things. Exactly. Leave it there." But they didn't want to leave it there because... And then the other day they rang me up and said someone's just thrown green paint all over it.
You'd love it.
And I would just say, he'd be laughing. He said it's still attention. He's still in the news, Anyway, death masks, enough of death masks.
We've disappeared down this rabbit hole of death masks only because I've never met anyone who's done this before, and it's intriguing that it's still a thing. And I love the elemental issue of it. How does a guy end up being a musician in death mask? Tell me a little bit about where you were born and how you grew up.
Bloody hell. Oh, I was born in Kensington in 1962.
What was it like living there then?
I don't remember.
When you were growing up, though, was it a happy childhood?
You don't know about my background. You don't know about my childhood. I told you,
I just fucking met you 20 minutes ago.
Okay, well, when I was 1 year old, my dad committed the Great Train Robbery, and from that moment on, we was on the run for 5 years.
See what happens in a pint with Seaniebee. Just get
there you go.
Son of a train robber. So he was one of the Ronnie Briggs's gang and all that?
Well, he was the gang. My dad was Bruce Reynolds. He was the guy who planned it.
Okay.
And Ronnie Biggs was an old friend of his that they'd met together in Borstal. I mean, we could talk just an hour about my dad and Ronnie Biggs and me and my dad hanging out in Brazil with him.
Right.
So that broke. My dad lay low for about 8 months, and then
did you have loads of cash then?
Basically, yeah. I mean, he was an instant millionaire, you could say. And so I grew up in Mexico. Well, over 5 years, I lived in Mexico, Canada, France. Then he came back to England to do another job and got arrested. So I then got sent to boarding school.
So what age were you when you realised you were on the run?
We weren't on the run. In my mind, see, because my dad was constantly changing his name, had different identities. He would change the way he looked. So he would put on 3 or 4 stones, shave his head, grow a moustache, wear a monocle, and be Keith Clement Muller, a German businessman. And
did he speak German?
He could fake his way through it. But in those days, in the 60s, most people weren't very worldly. An Englishman's idea of going on holiday was going to Margate. And
were you an only child?
Yeah, I was only.
There's so many only children.
I was an only child. Yeah, I know. But so
they have the best life, by the way.
So we were constantly moving around, and I think at some point I wondered why we never seemed to stay in one place. But we lived. I mean, when we were in Mexico, my dad bought the franchise for Dunhills. This is what a nutter he was. I mean, at this time it was the very first time Telstar had gone up. And they were trying to think of all new wonderful things that they could beam, using this bit of technology. And then Interpol had this bright idea. They said, why don't we all get together and put the world's most wanted list of the 10 most wanted people? And my dad was one of those 10. So it so happened that when he was broadcast and it was on telly in Mexico, it was like on a Sunday morning at a time when everyone had been sleeping off a heavy session on Saturday, So he was quite confident. That no one had seen this. Have you seen this man? Because he was quite high profile in Mexico, sort of living with the top 5%. In fact, the apartment we lived in was rented off the president of the Bank of Mexico. Brilliant. So when he bought the franchise to Dunhills, they said, we got to do some press and everything like that. So they had a picture of him in the airport, stood on the ladder coming out of the plane. And he's standing there, with, in his suit and tie and his briefcase and glasses, looking very much like Alan Wicker, and sort of like the headline was like, man from England comes to bring dunghills to Mexico, and that's just fucking insane.
I know.
That's just insane.
You think he'd run a garden patch somewhere and just have money?
I think his attitude was sort of like, just hiding in plain sight. You can almost be so obvious.
When did he die?
He died 4 years ago.
Okay, so you got the whole story from him.
Oh yeah. Well, I've written a couple of books on it with him.
We'll put them on the podcast if anyone wants to.
And I'm in the process at the moment because he wrote a book called Autobiography of a Thief.
Does what it says in the tin.
Yeah, but it got a lot of good reviews because most villains, when they write their books, they tend to embellish things and big them up a little bit. Yeah, or even there'll be certain stories that it wasn't them, it was someone else who's dead now, and they'll claim, I did that. My dad's biography was very, very different in as much as you got all the excitement and the thrill of being naughty, but then you had the whole grueling payout for what you'd done. It's the roller coaster, but it's also, the price that you pay for living that kind of life.
He did get caught eventually.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, he came back to do another job and he got nicked in Torquay and he got 25 years.
What would make him come back to do another job? Just ran out of money?
Well, yeah.
Part of it sounds like the thrill.
Well, we were living the high life in Mexico, and Buster Edwards, who was another one of the train robbers.
It was Phil Collins' character.
In the movie, who wasn't doing too well. He was finding it kind of hard to get by with him and his wife June and their daughter Nicolette. So he kind of got in touch with my dad and said, can we come out and stay with you? Because I'm at my wit's end here, sort of thing. Maybe thinking about giving myself up. I can't maintain this life on the run. He wasn't geared up for it. So he came to Mexico, and after a while, even that, it didn't suit him. So he decided that he would do a deal for a lesser sentence and came back to England. Unfortunately, it was discovered, or they worked out, that where he'd been and that he must have been with my dad. I think they found a photograph or something or other. And my dad realised that the game was up, so he had to do a runner. But not only that, his cover was slightly blown because he was a diamond geezer buster. But the thing is about my dad, he could pretend to be anybody. I mean, he used to tell people he was the youngest major in the British Army, and he'd get away with it. He could put on the accents and everything. Buster was your lovable rogue. And when he came out to join my dad in Mexico, the kind of people my dad was hanging out with, they couldn't kind of work out why would this guy who's pertaining to be this character be hanging out with a kind of Jack the Lad sort of, and so I think
your dad was right.
There was cracks in my dad's sort of the image that he'd put out over there, and then of course once Buster did give himself up, I think my dad got word that they were aware where he was, so that's when we moved to Canada.
But did you know as a teenager?
Well, I wasn't a teenager, was I? This was from the age of 1 to 7. Right. Well, I was just about 7 when he was arrested, so about 5.5 years he was on the run.
Young,
But you did say to me, I never thought we was on the run, but we're always moving around, and so I thought, because of all my dad's different identities, passports, and he'd say to me, this is your name now, and I'd have different names, and if you get stopped by the police, we ever get separated, this is what you say. And at one point, I'm going through the airport, and as the guy's looking at my dad and looking at his passport and looking up and down, there's that kind of moment. For some reason, and I was 3 or 4, I blurt out, "Daddy, why did you shave off your moustache?" But anyway, I thought that maybe that my dad was a spy or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was an exciting life, and I never saw him anxious or worried.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he was looking over his shoulder, which obviously he was. He must have been to a degree.
He was a very confident man, was he?
Yeah, but my mum, they were just having one big party all the time, basically. And so I never picked up on any fear or anything like that. Even to the point when he got arrested, I opened the door and then it was sort of like out of the Keystone Cops, all these police just came steaming in, and even then I wasn't worried. I thought it was like something like the spy came out in from the cold, they'd been rescued, didn't have to run anymore. And then I saw my mum crying, and then I thought, hold on a minute, something doesn't quite work right. Well, why is she not? And then it was, my dad said he's been a naughty boy and he's got to go away for a while, and I suppose that was like, really? And it only really dawned on me the seriousness of it when I got to visit him in prison for the first time. And he was literally in the centre of a maze in a glass cube. It took more than half an hour to get to him through all the different levels, doors, and all I can remember is the sound of the screw, that's the prison warder, his shoes, and they all had those Blakeys in those little metal bits, which just echoed in these concrete hallways, and clunk clunk with this big bunch of keys, jangle jangle, clunk clunk through one door, then another, and you're just going through this system. It seems to take forever. And ever going round and round and round and round and round until finally you get in this little room, and there he was in a bloody glass box.
Was he in solitary, yeah?
This was like the visiting room.
The visiting room, right.
And he was in like a little glass box sort of thing, and couldn't touch him.
And how long did he...
like that. So he got 25 years, and he ended up doing 10 and a half. He got parole. But if you add that together with all the other bits of time he'd done, including Borstal, he's spent 21 years of his life incarcerated.
Really? So what effect do you think that had on you growing up?
It made me realise that it's not fucking worth nicking anything. That's where I like my liberty too much. I just suddenly thought there's absolutely no way. When I joined the Navy...
what sort of a kid were you? Were you a fighter? Were you funny? Were you...
I was a bit of a fucking mental case, I think, really.
I'm not surprised.
I was a loner. I had this big secret.
You couldn't tell anyone?
Couldn't tell anyone. My mum had changed my name when I was at school, so nobody knew anything about that. Obviously, I came from a world, and because of the people that my dad knew, I say, this is Uncle Fred, he's killed people, and this is, and there I am at this very, very posh boarding school in Sussex. I had a kind of attitude. It was sort of like a double-edged sword, really, in as much as I thought, I could do what I want, really, if you knew my background. This is my mind of thinking as a child, in my mind, obviously, I thought my dad was bloody Superman.
You felt like you were not like other boys.
Yeah, I did. And I was always getting in trouble, always. I hated authority. So I constantly questioned it. I probably got caned more than anybody else. Well, I stabbed the Prince of Sierra Leone, but he did smash me over the head with a lump of wood. I was 8 years old then or something, yeah. I hated being at boarding school. All of a sudden, I've been with my dad. There's that old Jesuit saying, give me a boy for 7 years, I'll show you the man. So I'd been with him practically, every day through this massive adventure. I'd spent more time with him in those years than most dads get to spend with their kids their whole bloody life.
Yeah.
And to suddenly live in that jet-set life, suddenly he's in prison, my mum's hitting the bottle in tears, and I'm sent to boarding school. It was catastrophic. And I took it out on figures of authority because they were the people...
Were you bullied at school?
They were the people. No,
You were
the other way. I was a psycho. I hate bullies, you see, that's one thing. I hate authority, I hate bullies.
Yeah.
So at school I would stick up. I would do ridiculous things which made people just think, just leave him alone.
Steer
He's
clear.
a bit of a nut job. If a bully did try something, I would do something ridiculous like stab him in the forehead with a compass. Okay. And they would just go, leave the guy alone. He's not
Were you bright?
Yeah, I was. It kind of fucked me up, actually. They did this experimental thing. It was something akin to like an 11 plus, I imagine. And they put people that got a certain score, regardless of their age, into this class, and I found myself with kids like 2 or 3 years older than me. Before that, I'd been sort of top in maths, art and English, but when I got moved into this other little experimental thing, I hated it, and I couldn't cope not being sort of up near the top sort of thing, so I went to see the headmaster in tears, and so I was finding it very, very hard, struggling within this format. And he said to me, would you rather be a big fish in a little pond or a little fish in a big pond? I said, I want to be a big fish in a little pond. And that was it. And they moved me back. But that was a boarding school.
Interesting.
And then I moved from the boarding school. I got a scholarship to Emmanuel School, very well-respected school in... I think we're the only people to have beaten Oxford at rowing, actually, I think, other than Cambridge. Yeah. So, we had our rowing club at Putney on the Thames.
What were you studying?
Sorry?
I'm
still at school, yes, from the age of 13. So I was at boarding school from the age of 8.
Now, when did music come into your life?
My mum and dad always had music. They'd be dancing in the living room, listening to Frank Sinatra, this, that. My dad was mad about jazz. And my mum loved music. And, it would take 5 or 6 hours to go visit him sometimes, driving. So my mum would have a big Super 8, not Super 8, what do they call them?
They were
8
like
track.
Cartridges, weren't
Yeah,
they?
those 8-track things, just put them in and they just
you were posh if
go
you had
on
them.
forever. Yeah. Oh, we had money.
We had cassettes that used to angle themselves up. And
We did have money
did
then.
have money, yeah.
We did have money then.
So we're going to come back to your
chronological.
But I want to try and punctuate the chat with some of your music. And
Yeah, the music. Right.
So introduce one of your first tracks that we're going to play and tell me a bit about it.
God bloody hell! You
I know, it's
sprung that on me,
yeah,
haven't
we'll
you?
pick your best one.
You
Start off with an easy one.
You can't put that on me. We've done 18 albums.
All right, well, pick your favourite. Your favourite. I mean, you play harmonica, so which is the king harmonica track of Alabama 3? Let's start with that.
Bloody hell. There's 9 people in Alabama 3, so
Right.
generally no one gets a bloody solo. You're lucky if you get a couple of notes in on a track sometimes, but this is... And the lead singer, Larry Love, he doesn't like anyone stealing his shine. So everyone gets really mixed into this big kind of soup with him sat on the top of it. But this particular track, there's a lot of harmonica on it. It's a song that was written in the 60s about my dad. Have you seen Bruce Richard Reynolds? It was written by a folk singer. Dad was talking to the lead singer, Larry Love, and he was saying, hey, Bruce, we're doing this album. It's called Outlaw, and it's all about how in America they've got all these outlaws that they kind of, it's part of their mythology. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and et cetera, et cetera. And that's what my dad threw in. Oh, but you do realise there was a song written about me in the 60s? And Larry said, perfect, find it and we'll redo it. So that's one of them, and it's got quite a lot of harmonica on it, which is quite rare.
This is Alabama 3.
Have you seen Bruce Richard Reynolds? He's a man we'd like to find. They say the Great Train Robbery, he was the mastermind. And his firm, they pulled the greatest turn the world has ever known. 2 million quid was stolen, the firm split for parts unknown. Have you seen Bruce Richard Reynolds? He's a man we must detain. He's wanted for the robbery of the Glasgow Euston train. Age 32, height 6'1", eyes clear, his hair is brown. Apprehend Bruce Richard Reynolds, he is wanted by the crown. Well, Reynolds and some people got together as a firm. While doing bird and wormwood scrubs, he heard about a turn. So rob a train, but it needed brains, so Reynolds scratched his head. When I done my bird, I'll rob that train. That's what he said. When Reynolds left his prison cell, he started on his scheme. He contacted old Gordon G and Tommy Wispy's team. They came to an arrangement and a partnership was made. By summer 63, the scene was set for Reynolds' reign. Yeah. August the 8th, the raid went like a dream. 120 mailbags full of money was stolen by the team. But someone left his fingerprints and the guys were still no charge. But they'd only caught the muscle cause the brains were still at large, yeah. Mr. Reynolds made a vow. Well, no one grasped on me, he said, I can't desert them now. And iron bars and prison walls, they do not bother me. I've robbed the mail, so I'll rob the jails and set my whole firm free. By August 64, old Charlie Wilson left his cell. By late in 65, Rob Big said adios as well. Have you seen Bruce Richard Reynolds? He's a mastermind, just walking through the walls of jails and letting his firm go. First train robbery, 1866 at Seymour, Indiana. $10,000 stolen. The James boys, Frank and Jesse. The Dalton brothers, the younger brothers. Quail Hunter, Jack Kennedy. Black Jack Ketchum. Old Bill Miner, still robbing trains at the age of 92. Bittersweet George Newton. The Newton brothers and Bucky O'Neill. Big Nose George Parrott. Texas Jack Reed. Kid Slaughter. Henry Starr. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Red Buck Whitemore. Little Dick West. Piano Charlie Ballard. Sandbass. Black Jack Gang. Tulsa Jack Blake. Pennsylvania Butch Clark. Dynamite Dick Clifton. Flatnose George Curry. Bill Dooley Gang. Pegleg Bob Eldridge. Brooklyn Blackie Golden. Long John Halford. The High Fives Gang. The Hole in the Wall Gang. The Wild Bunch.
Okay, that was Have You Seen Bruce Richard Reynolds by Alabama 3. You said there were 9 people in Alabama 3. Why are they called Alabama 3? That's been intriguing me.
Guildford 4, Birmingham 6. You know all about Paddy Hill and Jerry Conlon, don't you? Who are good friends of ours, rest in peace, Jerry. And it was really because of them. But there was a case in Alabama called the Alabama 3, and it was 2 black kids and a white kid, or 2 white kids and a black kid, I can't remember. And they got accused of rape, and they got done by a lynch mob, and they were known as the Alabama 3. So the thing is, Alabama 3 is a political band anyway. So it's a kind of metaphor or reference to the fact that we stand for wrongdoings, miscarriages of justice, which is how we got involved with the miscarriage of justice, which Paddy Hill was one of the Birmingham 6 he used to run. We sing about America through a glass, eyed darkly, if you like, but there's a lot of satire in what we do, which is why when we went to America, on the back of Woke Up This Morning, they booked us into stadiums, and you got all these guys dressed up in mafia suits. Well, Alabama 3 all look like a bunch of faggy cowboys, on smack. Taking the
Which they
piss.
missed.
The redneck, no, they didn't like it. They thought we were going to walk out in gangster suits. They didn't realise that. But see, America's...
There's no irony.
I'm not going to...
Sarcasm and irony, they're not good.
I'm not going to start slagging Americans off. I could start all night.
I lived there for 9 years. I can slag it.
Well, do you know what I mean? Well, I've spent a lot of time out there. And I won't go on about their general IQ level, but the thing is if they'd done their research, they would have realised that Woke Up This Morning, Get Yourself a Gun is not a gangster fucking anthem. Yeah. It's actually about a woman called Sarah Thornton who got so sick of getting the shit kicked out of her by a husband policeman that one day in self-defence, she took his gun and shot him.
I did not know that.
So it's about female empowerment, you know.
Most people just know it as a Sopranos song.
That's it, get yourself a gun. I mean, even Nas sampled it, get yourself a gun. It's like, no, that's not what it's about. It's not what we're about.
Do we come back to the whole music bit, because I want to just finish off on the school, the college, and what
the
happened
beatings,
then.
the canings.
The canings, yeah. What
did you get that? Did you get that in Ireland?
I actually...
and the other thing, especially in Ireland, the priest that we had there as well, because we had our own church there, and he got slung out for noncing. Obviously, it's a boarding school. Back in those days, there was all sorts of stuff going on, and you've got the big scandal with the Roman Catholic Church in Ireland.
I know, I was flying in from New York when I was living over there, coming home for Christmas, and you know the way they have these little... corrections, in the Wall Street Journal or something, like, we fucked up on this.
Oh, yeah, but really small. I've got one of those when I sued Piers Morgan. Yeah, that's another story.
Well, we talked about that. I'd be interested in that. But, there was a correction that says, our article about paedophilia in the priesthood in Ireland incorrectly said hundreds of thousands of children were affected. It was, in fact, tens of thousands.
Oh, okay. What's a zero?
In a population of 3 million. Yeah, it's like, it was pretty serious, yeah. No, and again, I grew up with it. I was in an Opus Dei school, who are, dodgy, but I didn't have any noncing, as you would put it, going on. But there was...
You weren't aware of it? Or you were never nonced?
No, I'm surprised there wasn't. If someone said to me there was, I go, yeah, I'm not surprised. But I didn't hear of any, to be fair to them. I know 4 or 5, all mainly boys, by the way. I have this great theory, you might like this, which was, if you think about Ireland in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, there was no such thing as homosexuality. There was no gayness.
Yeah.
Gay was not a thing. Now, gay was clearly a thing. There were men who were gay but didn't know what gay was, right?
Yeah.
There was also this thing where you'd be a kid, you'd go and you say, how do you know if you're going to be a priest, father? Right? You'd be 5 or 6. Oh, God will send you a sign, my child, and you will know this, that you... And you go, yeah, okay. Well,
What's the sign that you fancy boys?
So my theory is that, particularly in Ireland, the sign that a boy of 15 or 14 or 13
wants to be in the church is that he's gay.
He's not interested in women.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah.
And unbeknownst to themselves, the Catholic Church were hoovering up all of the gay men in Ireland to become priests. Okay? I mean, it's a fucking solid theory.
It's not a bad theory, but and it lets the Catholic Church off the hook.
Well, it doesn't.
I'm surprised they don't buy that.
We're not letting them off the hook.
No,
so the seminary goes in at 17. He doesn't like women. He's pure. He's not like dodgy. He's showering amongst men. He's playing rough and tumble football, running, whatever. He's learning about the ways of God. But biologically, the man, the seminarian, is attracted to other men and is surrounded by other men. This is actually my theory. I haven't heard this. And so you end up
with
10% of priests being actively homosexual in the only way they can. They're usually around children. But there's very few priests in Ireland that nonced, I'm going to use your word because I quite like it, girls.
But if we cast the clock back to when Constantine decided, right, for better or worse, my empire's going to collapse unless I adopt this Christianity thing.
Yeah.
Came up with all the books and all the texts and thought, what's the thing that we're going to put out as our one book that keeps everyone happy, and came up with the Roman Catholic Church, their version of Christianity. The first thing that they did, a lot of people know this, is a lot of Christian symbols all comes from pagan iconography anyway, because they had to say, look, it's the same as what you believe in, it's
Easter,
just a different name, we call it this, but it's all the same, so it doesn't matter, Their culture at the time, Constantine and all his buddies, they weren't gay, but they all had boy lovers. They were from a time
Ancient
when...
Greeks.
So, you were assigned a boy for a certain amount of years, and it was a boy's schooling. Wives for children and status, and boys for pleasure. And so you got the people who put the Roman Catholic Church together, including Constantine. The first thing they did was outlaw women. So in all of pagan mythology, the feminine is up there with the masculine.
King,
they're balanced.
Yeah.
Earth was a mother, the sky, the heavens was the male. They completely obliterated the feminine aspect. They invented the whole thing about Adam being cast out of the Garden of Eden because of her as tempting. Invented the whole thing about it's women's guilt because what they've done was they get periods. So obviously that's going to come through all the way through the church anyway, that women are, that women are unclean or that they're not good for man, and so they're more likely to stick to each other. I mean, I think this is something they created that goes back to that, but it also ties up with to a degree. Anyway, religion. Never talk about religion.
Well, no, we do on this podcast. So anyway, you're in college. You're not. You're in school. Did you go? And you left, and then what happened then?
I left school. All my mates. Where I was living in Streatham then, and most of them were in gangs and kind of getting locked up left, right and centre, and I just thought, this isn't for me, what am I going to do? And so I joined the Navy.
What age were you when you joined the Navy?
17.
Right. Where'd you go? Falklands?
Yeah, unfortunately, everything was good up to the Falklands. I mean, I must have been to America about a dozen times before that, all over Europe, the Antilles, the West Indies.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it up until because obviously I've always got ants in my pants because of my dad, I guess, moving around all the time. So I enjoyed the Navy at first until I went down the Falklands. And I didn't sign up to be a hero or to go to war. I just thought it's a way to get an education and see the world and to get out of the shithole that I was living in London at the time. By then, my dad was still in prison. My mum had divorced my dad. She'd had a series of nervous breakdowns and had a severe drink problem. I couldn't stand the guy. And I just thought, I've just got to get out of this scenario.
The guy she was with after.
Yeah, very, very, very nasty, violent man. And so I just thought, right, I've got to get out of this scene. It was also, when visiting my dad in prison for 10 years, we had all these plans of what we were going to do when he came out. And I think I had a bit of a panic thinking, that had kept me going all of those years, thinking everything will be all right. When my dad comes out of prison, everything's going to be fine. We can start up again. And that enabled me to go through a lot of very difficult kind of situations growing up. And then I realised I'd kind of put him on a bit of a pedestal and thought, what happens if, when he comes out, we're just put together and it doesn't work out? And I think I kind of panicked about that a little bit. I thought, well, how can I give us a bit of time? So ironically, as he came out of prison, I voluntarily put myself in the ship. But it worked because it's the year I did my training. I still got to see him every weekend, and he would come down to Portsmouth. And then I got to travel a lot as well, So it was good until I went down to the Falklands. And then,
so we're talking like February, March 82, roughly, Falklands War, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what it was like.
It was shit. It was horrible. I mean, the weather conditions were one thing. I mean, unbelievable weather conditions.
Did you feel you were genuinely in a war? Because it was like over here, like you had the gotcha Belgrano thing. And what age was I? I was 14 when that happened. And it was being Irish. We used to go around calling it Las Malvinas and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, we have issues, as you know. But
you fucking what?
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm not afraid to say that. But you know why I say that.
Yeah.
But like it was almost like the first. I'm not going to say it was the first tabloid war.
It was.
It was a tabloid.
Well, it wasn't.
War.
It wasn't Vietnam.
Not for you.
Vietnam
there.
was.
Well, I see.
It?
There was a tabloid war. There was no like whatever.
It was total jingoistic.
Yeah.
Up your junta.
Up your junta. Yeah.
And everything
and
like that.
gotcha. And whatever, a few hundred sailors died in the Belgrade. I mean, were you?
Yeah, they do. Well, no, because the thing is I was on the flagship. I was on the Hermes. So twice a day, the Argentinians threw everything they had at us. If they sunk us, it was game over. 6 o'clock every day, every night, we got bombed. Hit the deck. I was up on the radar.
Was it an aircraft carrier?
Yeah, Hermes. Yeah.
So your guys would scramble and they'd just be a dogfight in the air and hope they wouldn't fucking sink your ship.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And action stations. Well, in that particular time, I was running the TV station. 2,000 people on board. That's a lot of TV sets.
2,000 people on board.
Yeah. I was looking after the BBC crew and the ITN crew, which was Brian Hanrahan and Mike Nicholson. They had one cameraman with them, a guy called Bernard Hesketh. He was a great guy. He'd been a veteran. He'd filmed 140 wars, this guy. So they shared one cameraman with them, and every morning they get kitted up and they go off and do their little bit of filming, and then it gets sent to me. I'd have a quick look at it, make sure it was all right. Then I'd send it back, I'd arrange a helicopter and they would ferry it by hopping from other ships to ships to ships, and finally it would get onto a boat going back to Ascension Isle or whatever, and then it would get back to England. And then we'd see it a few weeks later once it had been edited. I mean, that's another story. Once I saw the power of spin, it just made me remember what my dad said, that the first casualty of war is the truth.
Yeah.
And that is when I really lost interest in the Navy, when I realised it was all absolute bollocks, really. But I was up on the radar deck when...
Because Mackenzie was in the Sun newspaper in that book, Up Your Junta. He had a reporters on the ground in Buenos Aires who were filing reports that were the truth, and he was just putting them in the bin and writing fucking cartoon style headlines. Yeah,
but there's a lot. Obviously, the thing is that there was stuff they couldn't put out. Like when H got killed, the RGs waved the white flag, and H, the head of 2 Para, got up to go and accept their.
He got shot on the way.
Yeah, and then fucking sniper did him. Yeah. So after that, Paras went mad, and they were like slicing off ears and everything, keeping them as souvenirs and body parts and things. And obviously that was question. But when you're in the state of war, you're in the state of war,
Did you feel it was futile while you were there? Or?
Well, no, it was all about the oil once again, which they still haven't got up yet. But they've now found that there's more oil on land there than we've got all around in the North Sea. Right? Oh yeah, it was always about the oil. But not only that. When it first kicked off, when the RGs took over South Georgia, which is another little whaling station, I think 14 Marines stationed there or something, and they just steamed in, stuck the Argentine flag up. We had a boat out there, a survey vessel, which reported all these activities going on, and Thatcher was aware of it, and was trying to work out what to do, and it was the warming stuff. And he turned around to her and said, you know what, let's just let this play out a little bit, because she's going, this is outrageous, let's go down there and teach them a lesson. And they said, well, no, actually, let's just wait and see how this plays, because she was losing favour at the time. There's no way she'd have got the next election.
Right.
He said, we play this right, we can use this to your advantage, and there's an opportunity. And it was deliberately let to escalate, so that she did have a good excuse to kind of go to town. And the whole thing really was about her. She wanted to be a sort of bit of a female Churchill, if you get. And to a degree it worked. England was,
it galvanised, it
totally great work.
It was not long after the hunger strike situation in Northern Ireland, right, which was a real failure for her. For the first time she got the South galvanised, the nationalist South galvanised, because she had her famous out speech and Bobby Sands and all that, which was 81. And it got her back into power. Did you feel you were going to die?
Oh, yeah, many times. See, the thing on the way down there, we're all gung-ho. Yeah, bloody Argies, how dare they, they're going to steam in there, whatever. Then it was all hurrah, hurrah, Vulcan bombers, we've done the main runway, That's put an end to all of their aeroplanes. Well, we missed. It took them one day to fill in the one bomb that did, so that was a waste of time. That was celebrated, and made a big deal of. But when the Sheffield got hit, that was the thing. And I was up on the deck, I saw that happen, and I saw the people get brought in. And the mood on board, just that moment, was like, oh my God, what are we doing? We're going to fucking die out here. This is insane.
It's real.
Go on the other side of the planet, where we got no backup, no support. America wouldn't help us at the time, because politically it was very delicate for them. America, South America.
Most of the world just said, you guys sort that out yourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was only when, we could prove to the Americans that the Russians were behind it mainly, because they wanted to stick a Russian base. And they'd done all sorts of deals with the Argentinians. And, I saw it with my own eyes. They had all the best Arctic Russian gear. The shit we was wearing was the same that the Antarctic was issued. I'm not kidding you.
I hadn't heard the Russian
I'm not kidding you.
I hadn't heard that story.
The stuff we was wearing was the same issue that he'd had 100 years ago. Nasty, nasty oil jumpers wrapped in greaseproof paper in cardboard boxes. Even the boots were made of a compressed cardboard. Completely unsuitable for the terrain, the climate. Yet the Argies, they were undertrained and they were bloody starving off them by the time, the length of time they'd been out there. But best boots, best kit. They were all kitted out by the Russians. And the Russians were giving them satellite information. It was only at that point, when that could be proved, that America then realised, never mind upsetting our southern neighbours. If this is Russia playing a little hand, we've already had this with Vietnam, etc., and Cuba. And so they started giving us satellite information, which they weren't going to do beforehand. They thought it would make an unfair bias.
Maybe it was a short war.
6 months. It was unsustainable. I mean, the thing is that by the end of it, we had completely wiped out their air force. They didn't have any pilots left. I think
they were a basket case of an economy anyway, which is to your point about where they get all the gear.
And as I said, I saw the
mates
Sheffield got hot. I wouldn't say mates, people that I knew, and there was a character, a Marine called Kovacs, that I thought was fucking a great guy. He was always getting into trouble, and every day it's like Marine Kovacs report to the, and it's just, what's he done now, and everything like that. And when they read out, every day a load of them would leave in helicopters and go over and come back, and when it was like he didn't make it back, that was like, The weird thing is that once you've gone through that thing where you're going to die, and I mean, there's a guy I hated, and that guy was Jock Steele, and my action station, when you asked me what did I do, it wasn't just the TV thing. I was also a diver. I was one of 5 divers on the Hermes. So you got that.
For mines.
So you got that side of for mines, and take readings all the time of prop shafts, poker gauge readings. Make sure that the shafts aren't wearing down irregularly, and there's a lot of intelligence equipment underneath the ship, your sonar, and also you've got your little electric cathode things which stop marine animals planting themselves on it. Ducts, vents, all things that you need to kind of check and stuff. I was an electrical weapons engineer. You had 12 different stations, and that could be sonar, radar, ICS communications, or the TV studio. And you was on a 3-4 month rotation, but it was the best one to get because it was fun. So we do little news skits and stuff like that. And that's when I started doing music with a mate of mine.
Okay.
When we get back to that. But there was a guy I couldn't stand, a guy called Jock Steele, and it so happened my action stations, when it went, action station, you had 7 minutes to shut down the whole ship and everything, with everything sealed up. And no, what am I talking about, 7 minutes? It's 2 minutes, 2 minutes. No, I think 7 minutes you'd be dead. About 2, well, I'm going back, over 20, 30 years. Anyway, it so happened that my action station, tiny little room with a few bits of equipment in it, and mine was with him, of all people. You know, we've had action stations, we wanted to lock down and be in this little place. And I'm sat there with him. The amount of times where we did it is like, you know, like action station, hit the deck, you know, and you kind of think, fucking hell, it's, you know, attendar, incoming, and you're on the floor. And there was one particular time, and we're waiting to hear our Harriers take off. It's incoming. We're going, fucking hell, why aren't you taking off it? Why aren't you taking off it? And it's like that. And we're waiting to hear the thing, you know, because we were up in the island where the office was, which is by the flight deck. And at one particular time, and it said, so-and-so's been hit, and we've got Superetendar on radar, we got Exocets on radar, and it was hit the deck. And I looked at him, and this time I really thought, fucking, that's it. We've lost our goalkeeper. That's been fucking blown up. Yeah. We've got no defence now. He was sat under the table. I was sat in a filing cabinet. And we thought actually we were quite safe being up in the island, you know, at least we were away from the armour and everything. So we thought, well, we found out afterwards that there was a secret stash of Sidewinder torpedoes that had been appropriate in the room, right underneath us, you know. But I had that really cheesy classic moment, whereas we looked at each other and thought any minute now it's going to go kaboom. And I looked at him and I said, do you know what, Jock, you ain't that bad. And he goes, neither are you. And we shook hands. It's like, if we get out of this, we should have a drink and all of that, you know. Wow. Of course, hit the deck, da. And then it said Glamorgan's been hit. I think it was Glamorgan. Glamorgan's been hit, and it was like, right, it missed us, it got that one, fucking hell. And then I looked at him, I didn't mean a word of that. No, neither did I. It was one of those.
But you know you did. Play your second song of the podcast.
Second song. Well, this is going to sound like it's all on a bit of a dad prison theme here. Let the Cage Bird Sing. It's a song we always used to dedicate to Paddy Hill. And it's quite self-explanatory, really. Let the Cage Bird Sing.
He had the hands of a missionary, she had the body of a nun. In the fumblings of their union, they find the key to kingdom come. Bought her a bird in a silver cage for blessed company, 'cause he knew one day they gonna lock the door, they gonna throw away their key. Blow out the candles, morning's moving in, flowers bloom on Alcatraz now. Let the cage bird sing, yeah. Let the cage bird sing. Let the cage bird sing, yeah. Let the cage bird sing. Well, the government called them terrorists, all the people they called them saints. They lost the plot, they kept them moving, looking for heaven's gate, yeah. Stole a car, they got as far as a motel on Damascus Road. TV screen threw back their dreams as the cathode ray exploded. Blow out the candles, morning's moving in, flowers bloom on Alcatraz now. Let the cage bird sing, yeah. Let the cage bird sing. Let the cage bird sing, yeah. Let the cage bird sing. Come on, blow out the candles, morning's moving in, flowers bloom on Alcatraz now. Let the cage bird sing, blow out the candles, morning's moving in, flowers bloom on Alcatraz now. Let the cage bird sing, yeah. Let the cage bird sing. Let the cage bird sing, yeah. Let the cage bird sing.
Okay, so that was Let the Cage Bird Sing by Alabama 3. Let's get, finally, I did not expect this chat to go the way it went. I thought I'd be talking to a musician tonight. Talk me through now how you became part of the Alabama 3 and got into music and everything. The Falklands was
Okay.
over, you came home.
Okay, well, it was when I was down the Falklands, really. Obviously, you got hours and hours and hours and hours where you're just sat doing bugger all, basically. Just sat in a control room for hours on end on your own. And I was going out with this girl in Little Venice. She was not by blood, but she was kind of more or less Richard Branson's niece. He lived on a boat 2 boats up, and the boat that she lived on with her family, he'd given to them because he was good mates with her mum. You know, they'd lived for years on the canal before he'd made it big. She used to play guitar and harmonica. And so I bought her a Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee record for Christmas, not knowing who the hell they were, but I saw on the cover there's a guy with a harmonica and a guy with a guitar, and, you know, I thought she might like this. And I fell in love with the record myself. She bought me a harmonica. So, like, hours and hours on board, nothing to do in the middle of the night. I thought, you know, I'll try and teach myself that. And I'd played guitar a little bit as a kid. Couldn't believe how bloody difficult it was. I didn't know about keys or anything then, so then I got to learn about keys. Then I met this guy in the Navy who'd been in a band, and he wanted to form a band together. So, because I was doing the TV studio, you know, and we used to film the vicar every night, and he'd do his day-to-day news, etc., etc. And at the end of it, we used to do a little music thing till we got banned, because we did an anti-officer song. But then whenever we was on tour in America, we'd set up gigs, me and him.
Right.
But we got into a lot of trouble. We used to get into a lot of fights, and eventually he got kicked out. So that was the end of that. When I came back from the Falklands, so I was living on the boat in Little Venice, and there was a pub there, and the whole area around there was all famous semi-retired rock stars. Dave Gilmour had a house there, and, you know, I could go on and on and on. But there was a pub there where they decided that they would start doing music. And so they got all the locals, and I don't know if you've heard of a band called The Pretty Things. They were perceived as the first bad boys of rock, and Phil May, the singer, had the longest hair in rock and roll, and they were the original lock up your daughters, would you want them going out with a pretty thing kind of thing, before the Rolling Stones. Okay. But they're all mates, and they even interchanged members at one point. In fact, Dick Taylor, the guitarist of The Pretty Things, was originally the bass player of the Rolling Stones, and they were one of David Bowie's favourite band, which is why on Pin-Ups, yes. Oh, you pretty things. Yeah. Moving forward, they disbanded, and then they got back together in the 80s, just at the time when I came back from the Falklands. So they were playing in this thing, so I joined them then, and the lineup was bloody spectacular. Ian Stewart, who was the original member of the Rolling Stones, who'd got sidelined by Andrew Lou Goldman for not being attractive enough. He ended up being the tour manager, but he was a great boogie-woogie pianist, and he's on all the early albums. He was on keyboards. The bass player was a guy called Dave Winter, who had been Neil Sedaka's bass player. 2 drummers. One was called Willie the Wall Wilson. He was the guy that Nick Mason's not too good with the old click track from Pink Floyd, so when you're seeing them live, sorry Nick, but it'd be Willie the Wall behind the wall playing most of the drums. Yeah. I shouldn't have said that. I let a secret out there. All you Pink Floyd fans would be pissed off. Dave Gilmour was the guitarist. Really? Ralph Ravenscroft, the sax player who did Joey Raffick's Baker Street. Yeah. He was in it. The other guitarist was Hugh Lloyd Langton from Hawkwind. And the other drummer was Mike Giles from King Crimson, which was like one of my favourite bands at the time. And he was bonkers. He'd just be playing and then do a completely different shuffle to throw everyone off and think it was funny. But,
and this band...
So there's this supergroup and me.
Yeah.
On harmonica, yeah. And that started the love affair, really. And so I was with them for like nearly 2 years. And then I got drafted from Naval Intelligence back down the bloody Falklands again, and that's when I yeah, but it was unfortunate. There's only me and another guy of the rank that I had. I was like only the equivalent of a corporal or something. It turned out that there was only 2 people trained up on this particular bit of hush-hush equipment, and he'd done his 6 months down there. There wasn't anyone to replace him, so I had to go down there, despite the fact I'd been told I'd never go down there again. And that's when I just thought, this is bollocks, you know. I've already wasted 8 months down there. I don't want to go down there again. And it was pointless just going round and round and round and round this island, particularly that I didn't particularly agree with it by then anyway. And so I came out and went straight to Australia with the guy I had the band with in the Navy, you know, doing the TV stuff. Then he got a really bad drug addiction and I couldn't handle that anymore. So then
How
I
were you
came
and
back
all
to
that
England.
drugs and all that, was it?
The thing was, I mean, back in those days, I was a lunatic speed freak. I guess cocaine, thankfully, doesn't work on me.
Doesn't work on me, yeah.
Thank God. You know, I think it should only be given to women. Most of my pals, I'm in the music business, as you know. In fact, the film business, every bloody business. They're all fucking charlied out of their brains. It's part and parcel of it. The stock market, you know, everything.
Yeah.
And in a room full of people on coke, all you can hear is me. It's
correct.
Pointless. It just makes you drink 10 times more, and you talk shit. No one's listening. Unless I'm missing something, it just doesn't work for me. But I look at some people, I think you've spent your whole career and all your money and everything, throwing it all away because that's all you care about.
But you're also not.
What does it do to you?
You're also,
it doesn't work for me.
You're also, like, I can talk for Ireland. You're a raconteur. You can talk and you're confident. And I do see a lot of my friends who are maybe shy and who are retiring. When they take it, they become confident, and
so that's why it makes them animated.
I can see I see why he does it, but you know, it's not the real him. It's a facade he puts on. Whereas I prefer to just go, no, this is me, and I'll drink until I keel over, but like, that's me, you know. It's different.
I drink too much, and I like my herb. Yeah, no, the hard stuff. No, I think I'm 56. I think in a couple of months, and I'm just thinking, yeah.
And so, like, you'd met this girl with the harmonica and stuff. But did you marry her, or what happened?
No, I didn't marry her. No, I've never got married, but I've got kids.
With you on that.
I've got kids. Yeah, I've got 2 boys, Otto and Ziggy.
Love the names.
They're very cool, and they were brought up in the Caribbean, in Tobago. The mum's dad was from Trinidad. He had a business over there and he bought a lot of land, so we went over and we built some guest houses out there, and then the kids were born and they lived out there. Then basically, we weren't particularly getting on. It was a bit of a jump for me going back and forth. I didn't like being out there, to be honest. I mean, there's nothing to do. I went mad. I just used to sit with the fishermen every night, and during the day I'd either go walking with the kids for miles until they was at school, or I'd just collect driftwood. Because I had a very busy life back home in England, and I was rotting when I'd go over there.
So then, how did the Alabama 3 then take shape?
Well, I used to run a nightclub called the TARDIS. It was quite a famous place in Clerkenwell.
Was it bigger on the inside?
Well, it was, yeah, because... but it was. You may laugh, but, you know, it was. It was about 100 yards long. We had 7 levels. The main room, we had 60-foot ceilings with trees. Trees for London did a party there and we said there on the promise that you put the trees in. So I've got this nightclub, we got a party going on, and this guy comes up to me, and it's one of the guys who ran Mojo with Paddy Hill, a guy called John McManus. We gave them an office at the TARDIS studios. Because Mojo were doing gigs for Alabama 3, and I wasn't really aware of them, but John McManus was constantly playing them, you know, and I was going, I can't stand this band, bloody country sort of thing, you know, and of course you get playing it like anything, you get an earworm, don't you, and then you start going, this is all right kind of thing. So he brought him along, Larry Love, the lead singer, and I was chatting at the bar.
Is that his real name?
What? No, his real name's Robert.
His real name is David Smith.
Real name's Robert Spragg.
Okay, that's not bad either.
Yeah, but he's from Wales, and a sprag is a pit prop, which is kind of anyway. Not
Billy Bragg, isn't it?
Not as good. Well, everyone in Alabama 3 has a pseudonym.
What's yours?
A nom de plume. Harpo Strangelove. What are you laughing at?
It's ridiculous.
Of course it's ridiculous.
I don't know anything about this, man.
Alabama 3 is fucking ridiculous.
I know, it's great. I love it.
So anyway, so he's at the bar and he goes, so-and-so tells me, you know, you can play harmonica and stuff like that. And what I've totally left out, I was in a pop band in the 90s. That's another bloody story.
Who are they?
We had 2 top 40 hits and kind of toured all over the place for a while. They're called Octopus. EMI spent absolute fortunes on us. All ended up in tears. We never delivered. Everyone lost the plot, mainly our producer. I mean, I could go on. I mean, that's a story in itself, but they cut us loose. I think we're officially known as the band that killed Britpop.
Not a bad thing.
No, not a bad thing. But our point of Alabama 3 is they were a Britpop band as well. But because everyone was waving the Union Jack and kind of nodding to everything that was kind of great about being British. Blur nodding to Ray Davies to the Kinks, and you got Oasis nodding to the Beatles. That's all that great when Brit was fab.
Genuflecting.
Yes, that's the one. Indeed. In Alabama, they were thinking, we can't just go out and do this. So they decided to put on the American persona. and all have silly names and all sing and talk with American accents.
Really?
So much so that today people still
I
think
thought
we're
you were
American.
American, yeah.
It was a joke as a kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
a piss take at all the people trying to
we
be
discussed
terribly
earlier.
so British.
As we discussed earlier, Joe completely lost when you went to America because they
Yeah, the joke there didn't wear. Anyway, so he
has it
said
been
to
a
me,
successful venture?
as our managers keep telling us, we instead of complaining all the time, we should be happy and grateful that the fact we haven't had a hit record in years. We're still touring, still doing all the festivals every year. We still put an album out every year.
What do you feel is your big appeal as a band? You have a loyal base, though, right?
Yeah, because we've been going a long time. We've got a very, 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 very loyal
People grow old
base.
with you as a soundtrack.
They have
to
done,
their life.
and they introduced their children and their children's children. It's kind of like we've
Their
become
father's
a family
father's
band.
father's father,
Yeah, Alabama 3 is just not for Christmas, you know.
Right.
I don't know why. There's something infectious about the band, I suppose. I mean, a lot of people like the lyrics, which have got nothing to do with me.
Do you love it?
Yeah,
Like, how long have you been in this band? Like,
where are we at? 2018? 18 years. 18 years.
is it a good way to spend 18 years?
Yeah, I moan and bitch all the bloody
Yeah.
time, but
Everyone does their job.
I guess well, that's the problem when it becomes a job. I mean, the thing is, we're lucky that we go out in two formats. We go out as a 4-piece and as a 9-piece. Since I was in the Navy and in ships and was a diver, you wouldn't think I'm claustrophobic, but as I'm getting older, I'm starting to not like people in my space too much. But generally, we play smaller venues. That's the point of it, because it's quite, we can only play big venues with 9 people. We've got a lot of kit. It's a big, big sound. And so the only way it can be economically viable is that you have to play big venues, and you can't do too many of them a year. So to keep the kind of the faith going, keep the flag waving, we do little small ones.
Did you ever nearly break up, or have you had comebacks together? Or
There's...
it's rare for a band to stay together that long.
It is, and I don't know.
What do you put that down to?
There's something very infectious about our grand leader, Larry Love. I think he's a good shepherd, even though I think everyone in the band secretly hates him.
Yeah, but that's good.
He's
It's a love-hate.
It's a love-hate.
So to speak.
He gets away with murder, but he's incredibly magnetic. I don't know, maybe it's the work. It's the invested work put in. I think generally everyone is actually quite proud of what they've done with the music. A lot of people can't believe we're not bigger than what we are. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that the Guardian of all people, said we're the best live band in England. And
I'll be
at
going to see
festivals.
you next week. You're touring at the moment.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. We're touring. This is Larry's latest mad idea. Well, a couple of years ago, he upset everyone by saying, "I've got this concept for a triple album, and it's all going to be based on the Wombles."
I
said, "Are you kidding? We're supposed to be kind of like hardcore, radical,
You're
left
Orinoco,
wing,
aren't you? You're Orinoco.
Fuck you. You're Madame Cholet then.
Fine. The Madame Cholet podcast.
Now polish this.
This is the ABC Acid Blues Country album, which we're going to close on a song from it.
Yeah, this is Larry's latest idea. I said he
Yeah.
wanted to do a Womble trilogy, and we got as far as the men from Womble, the women from Womble. Then we basically had a mutiny and said, "You're not going to." By the way, Womble is an acronym for World of Militant Beat Liberating Executioners.
Okay.
Because we're underground, man. Get it? Yeah. Well, that was his whole
And you're
premise.
wombling free.
Yeah, that was his whole premise. So he managed to get 2 hours before he said no way. So he's so pissed off about this. He's obsessed. He wants to do his triple album. So I think to go with this tour,
in a climate where there's not even so much as a fucking EP, you're producing a triple album.
Well,
that's zagging. That is zagging.
It's the ABC of Alabama 3, acid blues country.
All right, we're going to
So the
close.
three-step album, yeah.
We're going to close on one of those songs, but before you go, I want
Yeah.
to ask you one question, and I ask this of everybody, and I have no fucking idea why you're going to say this. You have to either talk to the young Nick in his ear, or a young kid today who's setting off. What have you learned? What is your wisdom that you want to pass back in a sentence, or 2 sentences, or 3 sentences?
Become a lawyer.
That's possibly the best answer I've had to that from the creative people I talked to. Play us out on a song from ABC.
Oh, okay, but this is very apt. Just before I sign out, I'm also in the process of doing a documentary on the life story of Brian Jones. It's 50 years ago next year since he was found murdered. Mm-hmm. He was murdered.
Really?
He was, yes.
Is that what the documentary
is? Only partly. It's more really about the fact how he's been kind of whitewashed out of his importance to rock and roll. I'm not saying.
I'm not saying.
Yeah.
Sue me for all the wealth of my podcast.
You'll find the podcast has disappeared. Mick moves in mysterious ways. I'm not joking, mate. I'm telling you, they're like the mafia. But anyway, before I go missing. So we've done a song, and it's about Everyone Knows Who Killed Brian Jones. I'm just trying to think of the proper title for it, because we call it Brian Jones, it's called something else. And we've actually got a really good video with it, which shows Orlando, our keyboard player, as the devil killing all the famous people in rock, including Brian Jones. I'll never be satisfied.
I'll never be satisfied.
I'll never be satisfied, yeah. On
also
the Blues album.
The Brian Jones
Jones, and it's got a great
new album.
Yeah, and it's a great video as well.
By Alabama 3. The video you will find a link to in the blurb of this podcast. This was one of the most extraordinary podcasts I've had on A Pint with Seaniebee. Thank you, Nick Reynolds, for sharing your life with me. It has been a blast and a ride. And and we're going to cheers, because we are
cheers,
drinking.
Nice one, mate.
Alabama 3, the Brian Jones song.
Yeah.
People always asking me, what's the blues? Well, the blues is when you ain't got no money. The blues is when you're hot stepping out the French windows, and you left your crocodile shoes under another backdoor man's bed. The blues is when you've had enough. You cock your clock and declare to God and to the devil, let the party begin. Everybody blames Billy Hyde and his pimp. I was holding her hand and she went limp. Poor Amy Winehouse never stood a chance. I switched to Stolly for adulterated under-the-counter brand. Loaded the bullets, Kurt Cobain's gun. Made damn sure Jim Morrison's bath was hot when it ran. In a Grand Ole Opry on that Saturday night, I got Hank Williams high when he took that last drive. I tell ya, I'll never be satisfied. Crossroads midnight, did the deal with the devil, blamed another man's wife. Flew to LA, gave Lemmy his one last line, put the pillow on Bowie, said, rise Lazarus, rise. I put Spike and Super Vicious his arm, I tied the rope around Ian Curtis, I walked on cool and calm. I left the soap on the floor where Whitney Houston slept in the shower. I'm a mystery man, shot Tupac Shakur, I tell ya, I'll never be satisfied. I can't I'll never be satisfied. I can't get enough. I'll never be satisfied. I can't get enough. I'll never be satisfied. I can't get enough. Everybody knows the killed Brian Jones. That's John, that's Paul, that's George and Ringo. Go tell Mick, Keith and Charlie the news. It was me, put the poison in the swimming pool.